accommodate video and the voice. So, but all other members who are able to show their videos during the session, I will be allowed to do so. May I therefore invite you all to start with this meeting with a moment of silence and meditation. Thank you very much. Ms. Machalamba, can you before we flight the agenda, can you indicate to us who are the members who are present in today's meeting?
Good afternoon and thank you, Chair. Present is Dr. Lomo, Ms. Kleko, Ms. Shabangu, Ms. Clark, Dr. Leroux, Mr. Mutubatse, Mr. Mjadu, Ms. Marais, and Dr. Litlape. I've received apologies, Ms. Sene and Mr. Van Staden will join the meeting later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Thank you for logging in. As indicated, you will be marked present in the meeting of today's portfolio committee. If Ms. Machalamba can flight the agenda for today. Okay, honorable members, as you can see, we have 5 presentations today. We'll probably be in this meeting until just before 9 o'clock. We start with Professor Van Zyl, who will introduce himself very well, and then we'll follow up with another presentation from a research unit of economics of excellence of excisable products. The third presentation will be the youth interactive on their input. This is the one group of leaders who were not able to join us initially and the challenges. And then I think the last one, Ms. Machalamba, will be the one by MSRC. That's so. Yes, that's where we are, honorable members. Oh, no. Yes, MSRC will be the last presentation. If we could then invite the Professor Van Zyl. You are welcome, Professor Van Zyl. I hope they've given you sharing rights. We are in the portfolio committee meeting where we are allocating you 30 minutes to share with us what are the slides that we have. We have already seen your presentation, but you are still allowed to take us through not more than 30 minutes. And then thereafter, honorable members will interact with your presentation. And then you'll take at that time pen and paper and then respond to their questions. I know professors are usually given an hour in universities to present. We really must apologize. We don't have an hour. We will only allocate you 30 minutes. So at 3:05, which is your time to start, we will stop at 25 to 4. We will stop this and then move on to the members taking questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Professor Van Zyl.
Chair, could I just bring a short request?
Yes.
I wonder if at the end of our session we could just discuss the plans for the workshop on next week, Wednesday. Just that we can do that at the end of the meeting, so we don't interrupt our meeting further now and keep people who are on the platform waiting. But if I could just request 5 minutes at the end, please, Chair.
Yeah, provided it will be not more than 5 minutes. It will be quite a long 5 presentations. So it will be some of the clarities that may be given by the Secretary. That is fine, but we will not open that item for far too long, bearing in mind that would have been in a very late slot. So that part, thank you very much for raising it. Please, Ms. Machalamba, prepare yourself to support us with responses, and maybe we will give you the first batch as to what actually is an expectation. Then members can ask clarity-seeking comments. Thank you very much. Professor Van Zyl, start.
Chair, members of Parliament, thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you some important data around specifically adolescent vaping. I will definitely keep to time. I'm Used to talking for long, but I can also do so in a short manner. Before I introduce myself, just to declare, I have no conflicts of interest, no relationships with the tobacco or electronic cigarette industry, and any of my academic conflicts of industry related to pharmaceuticals do not apply to this. So who am I? I am a professor and pulmonologist at the University of Cape Town and Groote Schuur Hospital. I completed my PhD in 2011 investigating the impact of tobacco on TB immunity, demonstrating some of the mechanisms why, as particularly in South Africa, tobacco smoking is a really important risk for TB infection. I have published widely. I run the smoking cessation clinic in Groote Schuur, and was looking back through my notes, and my first talk on vaping and tobacco to a school was back in 2014, to a high school near to Groote Schuur. My last was to a primary school just down the road at Groote Schuur in Salt River. They requested me to come and talk to the learners in grade 7 about tobacco and vaping. And what I'm going to share with you today is some of the data that we have published recently. I know you have a long afternoon and are going to have many presentations. And so for the purposes of this presentation, I really wish to restrict myself to the issue of vaping, specifically as it relates to adolescents, and advocate exclusively in terms of my arguments and presentations to the restriction of banning the sales to under 18s or even under 21s. This picture in front of you comes from a high school principal of a high school in Newlands, and these were the vape pens that were found blocking the drain in that particular school. Many of the risks associated with adults pertain to children and vice versa, but I wish to restrict most of what I'm going to say to adolescents. And so I think it's important in this discussion to contextualize the issue of an adolescent and what's around it. So all of us, unfortunately, inhale polluted air from the environment. That's why we have laws in terms of emissions around cars and factories. And for the adult smoker, and you will hear presentations this afternoon, the risks of vaping are in the context of the risks of tobacco, and we all know that well. The so-called harm reduction arguments, or the arguments about whether vaping is safe to an adult non-smoker, is in addition to what is around in the fresh air around us. These are not smoking tobacco, and therefore vaping should not be compared to tobacco, should be compared to fresh air. But for the adolescent who neither should be or is smoking tobacco or vaping, the arguments are unique in this context as they are particularly susceptible, and I want to show you some of that data. And so we can argue and discuss around the adults as much as we wish to, but I think the adolescents are a priority where we need to protect the next generation. So just to remind everyone, and I'm sure you all know this, that vapes are both disposable or rechargeable. The rechargeable ones are the expensive ones. The disposable ones are the very cheap ones. And the UK, for example, has put through laws to ban disposable vapes because of their widespread use amongst the youth. The heating coil to boil the liquid contains cadmium and nickel, both of which are known to cause cancer. And then in the liquids, the propylene glycol, vegetable glycerine, flavorants, and nicotine are the components that all have both respiratory and cardiovascular issues related to them, which do also pertain to the adolescent. But I really wish to focus on the issue of nicotine and nicotine exposure in the adolescent, because this is probably the most important element when we speak about adolescence. So when you buy nicotine, and this is what I did for my experiments when I exposed cells from the body to nicotine and tobacco smoking in the lab, you buy it in a container that says, fatal if swallowed, do not breathe in, handle under a hood, and wear protective clothing. This same nicotine is what is being sold in the local malls over the counter without any restriction. So people consider in many spaces that nicotine is not a particularly problematic substance. There are multiples of articles demonstrating a whole host of nicotine-related illnesses, diseases, and issues. We have published some data as it relates to nicotine and pneumonia, nicotine and tuberculosis. So inhaling large volumes of nicotine is not a medically advisable activity. Similarly, these newer novel nicotine products have been synthetically changed that they increase the ability of the body to absorb nicotine. And so the normal burn and disgust that one has from a tobacco cigarette is not there. And this rapid absorption of nicotine in the system by these both synthetically modified, but are now also new so-called tobacco-free nicotine, or even nicotine analogs, are designed to get a very high, quick dopamine response, which is what is the primary reason for smoking or vaping. So how does this relate to the adolescent? Well, adolescents are unique. Those of you who have had children, have children, will know that adolescents have something called synaptic plasticity. This is where they learn fast, they get stimulated, they develop, and their brains are particularly sensitive to dopamine. They don't have the frontal cortex that we do as adults to restrain them. That's normal impulse behavior from an adolescent. But because nicotine works in the brain and adolescents are particularly sensitive to dopamine, there are significant risks related to exposure of nicotine to the adolescent. Now, in the past, where we smoked a few cigarettes behind the bicycle shed, this is a completely different perspective now with the explosion of vaping. And the concern is that these adolescents' brains become easily addicted and reprogrammed. There are a multitude, and as you heard, you've seen these slides of studies demonstrating the concerns and the risks in the long term. And if this works, and I hope it does, I'm going to show you a brief video I did with Carte Blanche back in 2022 with some adolescents from South Africa talking about their vaping.
Are you addicted to vaping?
To be honest, yes.
Do you know what the health impacts are of this?
It destroys your lungs, makes your breathing worse. It makes it so you're going to die at a much earlier age.
So why are you doing it? You give me all the reasons not to do it.
Yeah. To be honest, if I could just stop tomorrow, then I would. But then I'm addicted.
Marcus is just 14 years old. Ghost Inhale, Dragon and Waterfall are the names of e-cigarette smoke tricks. These smoke wizards are followed by millions on social media. Impressive, but the reality is that most vapes or e-cigarettes contain one of the most addictive substances around, nicotine. It's as hard to quit as heroin. Friends Emilio, Sean and Marcus are in high school and have all tried vaping.
Just looks cool, like, I don't know how to explain it.
What's so cool about it? Blowing the smoke?
The smoke and the tricks.
So those are some South African young children explaining some of their challenges with vaping. So we know from US data that, and we've seen this massive explosion of vaping in the US, 1 in 8 high school learners. This is from the US National Youth Tobacco Survey, somewhere in the region of 34% ever used, currently 13% using a product, 11% currently vaping. I know the SAMRC team will talk a little bit about tobacco usage later. But again, just to contextualize this, we have not seen this explosion, this usage of vaping previously. We know that youth tobacco has been present. There are some estimates, although the numbers are very small, from 2016 South African Demographic Health Survey, showing that vaping is there, but not particularly high. What's also important to recognize when I'm presenting some of our data is that none of the surveys we have as they relate to youth tobacco or youth vaping are perfect. Global Youth Tobacco excluded private schools and only did grade 8s to 10. and South African Demographic Health Survey surveyed at home. So we set out now almost 2 to 3 years ago to do what we've called the Adolescent Fresh Air Project, to understand the burden of vaping. We did not set out to work out the prevalence. We were interested in how bad is vaping and what's happening with these high school learners and what do we need to do about it. It was a very short survey done at school on their own phone or on the computer at school. And we surveyed as many high schools as we were able to in South Africa, and these data are published and are freely available. So 52 schools finally was our number, 8 out of 9 provinces. Unfortunately, many schools turned us down and many schools just simply did not respond to our request to participate. But in total, 25,000 learners, roughly split equal male-female. The gender differentiation in terms of transgender and did not identify, we can talk about later if you wish. That data is coming out in a publication soon at the SMJ. So what did we find? Well, 36% of high school learners surveyed reported ever having tried, which is roughly the same as what the US said, around 34%. And when asked, what have you used within the last 30 days or have you used in the last 30 days? This is the striking data. So roughly 20% any, 16% vaping, 2% tobacco, which was remarkably low, 5% cannabis, which is probably a topic for another day, which is worryingly high, and hookah. But what is very striking is if you look at the different schools, each of these dots on this graph is a different school. You will see the huge variability in both vaping, tobacco, cannabis, and hookah, depending on which school you look at, in which province, in which region. And we know this from tobacco in the past, that tobacco is highly variable depending on who you look at. So for some schools, it may be as low as 5%. For some schools, it may be over 30%. We then looked at it per grade. Again, each dot is a grade in a school. And you can again see grade 8s are thankfully reasonably low, under 10%. But in some schools, over 35% of that school's grade 8 were vaping. And if you go all the way through to matric, on average, just under a third, 1 in 3 high school learners vaping, and it could be close to 50%, 46.5% in some schools. And this is a very varying, worrying number where in some schools, nearly half of your matric class are using a vaping product. These data have just been accepted for publication and so aren't in the public domain as yet. We looked at dual usage, and dual usage, unfortunately, is quite common. About a third of those vaping dual use, and predominantly that's cannabis or hookah. So it's not only vapes that are being used, it's both vapes, cannabis, and hookah. So who's vaping and what are the drivers? Well, we showed earlier that by grade, and clearly the older you are and the higher your grade, the more likely you are to vape. We were not able to show any differentiation between gender, which I think probably is a good thing. We did show that if you thought vaping was dangerous, you were less likely to vape, which suggests that education is really important. And what was thought to be just a rich, wealthy school problem, interestingly, in this particular survey, the lower school fee range had higher vaping than the mid or high. We were not able to access schools that had non-fee paying. So these are all schools that had school fees, and the lower fee range is between 20 and 40,000 Rand. So that grouping, 20 to 40,000 Rand high school fee, had higher vaping rates than we saw in the super wealthy schools. If we then ask the children, why did you start vaping? Well, this is standard adolescent practice, curiosity. My friends, that it's a very social activity. We did then ask, did this change over time? And what is interesting is that if you divide by grade, the grade 8s, predominantly social, some stress and anxiety. If you ask the matrics, the social influences dropped off, but stress and anxiety has pushed up. And so what's interesting in this particular data is that stress and anxiety seems to be a predominant driver in the older children, whereas social influence in the younger. Access was the same across the board, and this is what we've heard from the learners. It doesn't matter how old you are, you can buy it on Mr. Delivery, on your Checkers 6060, you can go down to the cafe. Anyone under the age of 18 can access it. It is no more difficult to access a product the younger you are compared to how old you are. I'm going to come back to this data in a second. It just happens to be on this slide. The issue of dependence. There is no test for nicotine addiction in the adolescent as it relates to vaping. So we looked at a novel scoring system trying to understand how addicted these high school learners were. Did you vape before you go to school? Up to half of these high school learners are vaping within the first hour of waking. Can you get through the school day without vaping? Do you get irritated or grumpy if you are vaping? Do you vape every day? Those kind of answers to questions suggest significant nicotine dependence. And again, you can see in the grade 11s, grade 12s, this is anywhere between 60 to 70% of high school learners who are vaping demonstrate high nicotine dependence, which again is particularly worrying. When we do a word cloud and look at their responses and just simply say, why do you continue to vape? You will very quickly see that stress, addiction, it helps, anxiety, it makes me feel nice, are the answers that come through. So what started out as a friendly, exciting social activity very quickly becomes a coping strategy and a dependence. And this Sansky plot from our publication, you will see that social influence on the left starts up high and drops off quite quickly. Enjoyment, exploration stays up. These high school learners enjoy vaping. But right underneath that is emotional well-being and dependency. Now, this is only the first answer that they provided, so there may well be dependency and well-being or exploration. But you can see from these data what starts out as something that looks interesting and attractive because of marketing and availability very quickly, because these are all within high school. So this is within a couple of years, becomes a product that they need to get through the day. So what do we need to do to protect our children? Well, the first thing we need to do is to message clearly. Later on this afternoon, there will be discussions around harm reduction, safer than 95%. None of this has anything to do with adolescence. These high school learners were not going to use a product, shouldn't be using a product, and are uniquely susceptible to the harms of nicotine, no matter how you package it, as a tobacco cigarette, as a funky flavor, as a novel device. Youth and vaping should be 100% no, and that message has got to come through clearly. We absolutely need regulation. Now, we can argue whether it should be regulated like alcohol or tobacco or cannabis or cocaine. My personal preference, my personal opinion is that it should ideally only be sold in a physical store with a verifiable age documentation by a licensed salesperson. The ability to buy it with your burger at home on your parents' account without them knowing is just a crazy situation. Pricing, taxing, will be spoken about later, I'm sure. They need to be expensive because that will reduce the access to many learners. And there's no reason why we need more than one flavor. Nicotine gum comes in a single flavor. All of the other 7,000 or 8,000 flavors just make it attractive to high school learners. And then finally, in terms of the strategies, is education. The marketing mantra of safer than does not equal safe, particularly for an adolescent. Vaping is still a drug, even if it's a funky flavor. The brain in adolescents probably, and it's difficult to say from a lung specialist, is more important than the lung at this particular point. We'll see what happens in 30 or 40 years' time to the adolescents who vape for that long. And clearly the messaging will vary by age and by region. Much like tobacco smoking, across the country is not uniform. There will be pockets in South Africa that are not vaping. There will be pockets where it's very high. It doesn't mean it's not a problem. It means we need to get our messaging correct. And then the other challenge is the parents. Many parents I've spoken to have said, it's not a drug, it's not a problem. Here's a pen for my 16-year-old for their birthday to vape. That messaging has to be clear, that both parents and adolescents understand that vaping and nicotine exposure to an adolescent is a major problem that we really need to deal with. Unfortunately, to some degree, we've missed the boat because we already have thousands of high school learners addicted. And so I am now talking at junior schools to again trying to educate to prevent this young group becoming the next dependent group. So finally, in terms of conclusions, and hopefully I can give some time back to the committee, we really did fail the first time to protect our youth against tobacco. We can't let the next generation down. It's clearly highly variable. Our data shows 11 to 46%. I'm sure if we included more schools, that variability would be even higher. Stress and anxiety are frequently reported as reasons why high school learners start vaping and continue. And as I mentioned, some of our early data suggests that in these high school learners, addiction is a major, major issue. We urgently need the government to regulate access to electronic cigarettes amongst the youth. We are, and many of us are working with schools to try and engage. When a third of your matric class or half your matric class are actively vaping, you can't simply just suspend the whole group. Similarly, many of these are your first team sports players or higher performing academics. There is no well-implemented, designed vaping cessation strategy. We are doing our best to try and support schools and to educate both parents and learners about e-cigarettes. And with that, I just wanted to acknowledge that it's a very small team that have worked on this project. I'm very grateful to them. And I'm going to stop there and hopefully hand back time to the committee. And I'm more than happy to take any questions as they may arise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Ms. Machamba, I hope you can still hear me. Thank you for your presentation. You just finished 3 minutes, even 5 minutes ahead of your time. We appreciate that. All our members to interact with the presentation. I will also come at the end. I would wish that, Prof, you assist us. I would wish that a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old should not have sex. Let's say youth, or even not much younger. Are we successful? Where is the campaign to say 10-year-old? Besides that is statutory rape if it's a man above this age. But 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds are falling pregnant so it means they do have sex. So we should be able to limit what we can within what means we do. But I'm not really. Miss Honorable Chira Mpungose, you are the first one. Number 2, Honorable Clark, only, stop, closed. I'm joking. Another hand of Honorable Mare. Honorable Mare, you are number 3. Honorable Leroux, you are number 4. Honorable Mjadu, you are number 5. Honorable Shabangu, number 6. Honorable Dr. Letlape, number 7. Please remember your numbers, or the person above you, or the person just with you. The order again is
Honorable
1.
Mhlongo, Doctor.
You will
be number 7.
You will follow Dr. Letlape. Yes, 7.
Yes.
Let me start again. Number 1 is Honorable Kirampungose. 2, Clark. 3, Mare. 4, Leroux. 5, Mjatu. 6, Shabangu. 7, Letlape, and 8, Mhlongo. Any other member would like to also is not able to raise a hand?
9 will be Khaiko, Chair.
9, Khaiko. Thank you. Start, honorable members, one after the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings, everybody.
honorable members, staff members, and those who are presenting today. Ikamala Monali Churampungo Sengiphuma EFF. And my question, I just have two questions to the presenter. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think it was concise and straight to the point. I wanted to find out from you if you are of the view that the bill in its current form is efficient or will be conducive to counter the stats that you're presenting to us of young people, of children basically engaging in vaping culture, which is essentially, and I agree with the sentiment that it is drug culture and addiction culture. And then secondly, just to find out how you propose that the education aspect concerning alerting young people and parents of the dangers of vaping take place. What specific programs of action would you like to see take place, and which stakeholders be involved? I mean, for starters, basic education, I'm aware, and the Department of Health, but are there any more stakeholders in relation to this that you would see to deem fit to participate in this process of educating young people and other affected parties in vaping culture? That is all from me. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you. So to answer your first question, I think, yes, it goes a long way to assist.
Professor, we will not finish. Take a pen and paper and jot down. Members are going to ask one after the other. You come at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you for your presentation. It was a really interesting presentation. I think all of us agree that we need to get a handle on smoking when it comes to children. None of us want children to participate in smoking or vaping. And there must be strict laws around that. My questions are very similar to Member Chirwa. I just wanted to know from you, do you fully support all the aspects of the bill? Was there anything that you would change, and how would you change it? And do you believe that nicotine use and vaping and e-cigarettes should have separate sets of regulations, or should they be regulated under the same banner right through? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to say thank you to the person that was presenting, and I want to greet each and everyone, my colleagues and also staff. My questions is almost the same as the previous speakers. I just want to find out, you see that buying, a lot of these people can buy online and can come with the delivery and the 60 minutes and all those things. What must we put in place to make sure that people go in store and go buy these e-cigarettes or these vaping things? And then also, I want to find out from you, the plain packaging, will it make a difference in people wanting to buy flavors? And then I also need to know, you see that the parents is basically condoning these things. I need to find out, can parents, can we have an educational program like during the 80s we had this thing of HIV/AIDS and safe sex and stuff like that? Why can't we have something, an educational program running through the day, even with the children programs, to say that this is what smoking is going to do to your lungs, this is what it's going to do for prolonged smoking and stuff like that? Because I have an issue that you say that even primary school children are using these vapes, and even the poor schools are using it. So I thought because vaping is too expensive, it is only for the rich children. They will be able to buy the vaping, but you are saying it is clear that the poor schools are also buying it. So I just need to understand what must be put in place for this thing to work, for this bill to work, and what is happening with the disposable vapes. How are we disposing of those things? Is there a way of doing it, or are we just going to pollute our country with just disposable vapes? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Prof. Smith, for your presentation. It was really interesting and informative, and it's nice to see data from the South African context. I had a few questions. The one is just, I mean, I think that we are all extremely concerned about the prevalence of vaping amongst the young and the impact on the young, particularly the neuropsychiatric impact of vaping. And I think, I mean, just from your clinical role as a smoking cessation supporter and running the clinic, how easy is it to get people to stop vaping and teenagers to stop vaping? And it seems like, as you say, we've missed the bus with this group of teenagers, and many of them have started. What are your outcomes when you try and get young people to stop vaping? The second question is just around the recommendation about license that they should be sold by licensed salespeople. Is that how you understand the bill, or does that need to be added to the bill? So that would be the second question. And then just the third question is, I am interested to see from your data that although the incidence of vaping in those schools is very high, the incidence of smoking is low. And I'd like to get your perspective on the argument that are made by some that most societies, about 20 to 25% of people, will be consuming for different reasons a nicotine product. And so it seems like, even from your data, that the smoking is very low, the vaping is high, so that people seem to be replacing cigarettes. And I think that it seems like also the smoking rates in South Africa have come down, especially amongst the youth, with vaping. And so I hear what you're saying about the 95% isn't relevant to youth. But if they would have been taking up smoking, is this not a better option for them? Not that it's in any way something that we want to encourage, but I'm just trying to understand that that argument and your perspective on that argument. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, Chairperson and Prof, I've got one question. Would you agree that vaping is the biggest threat to smoke tobacco? How does treating the single largest competitor to tobacco, which has been found to be harm to reduce support public health? Are we not protecting smoked tobacco by continuing to put our messaging that could be confusing the smokers about harms of vaping and how this compare to smoke tobacco? I think I'm covered with other honorable members. I've got only that one question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon to your colleagues. And thank you, Prof, for your presentation. I hope I'm audible.
You are.
Thank you for your presentation, and I just want to check with you, because on the previous presenters, in their submissions, they've indicated that some they said nicotine is toxic and some they said nicotine is not toxic. And we know that nicotine is one of the registered drugs in South Africa, and you have extensively covered its risk and the impact on health in your presentation. How do you suggest that nicotine be regulated in South Africa for these newer products? Because, I mean, they've proved to be having some kind of addiction. And what is your take on the notion of reduce harm? We've heard that a lot from previous presenters. The reduce harm as compared to just reduce exposure, as we have been told that these are different concepts and may not be necessarily be equivalent. Reduce harm and reduce exposure. I just want to hear your view on that. And again, what key lessons or advice that not noise, please. What key advice or lessons that you can share with us about the cessation program, if possible, include the success stories on of those programs. While providing us with that information, please indicate if you find nicotine containing product to be appropriate for cessation program, and also indicate the role of the specialist, medical specialist, in the nicotine in the cessation of smoking, especially this nicotine containing product. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. My questions, the first one is, you say that vaping should be compared to fresh air. Is that a universal approach of scientists in this area, or that be a unique South African approach? And if that is the approach, when the nicotine, to my understanding, that is used in vaping products is the same as the nicotine that is used in nicotine replacement therapy, would we be using the same standard on a cost-benefit analysis comparing NRT to fresh air? And if not, why not? And this bill is not just about youth, and you are a cessation specialist. So in relation to adults that can't quit for various reasons, and they're the ones that contribute to the 20 or 32,000 deaths that we talk about, depending on which source you are quoting. What should they be offered? And when we have the same population, same source, how do we differentiate the message? Because even with cigarettes, it's unlawful for anybody under 18 to use cigarettes. What much more can we do if we don't just come up with punitive measures, jail terms, expulsion from schools, etc.? How is it going to be different with vaping? Lastly, you refer a lot to the US regulator in terms of studies from the US. We've been informed in previous presentations that the FDA, which is the US regulator for tobacco and related products, has differentiated these others, comparing them to cigarettes, where they've registered vaping products, they've registered heat-not-burn products, they've registered snus, and they've registered nicotine pouches, and given the suppliers or producers the ability to make different claims, ranging from reduced exposure to a public health benefit. And they have seen the incidence of smoking greatly reduced, which your study shows as well. And they see nicotine replacing smoking, vaping replacing smoking amongst youth, but the trend of nicotine dependence and use, even amongst youth, trending down. What is your comment on those issues? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mare, oh, is done. Oh, Honorable Mhlongo, sorry, Honorable Mhlongo.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation from the people who are presenting. I'm having, in other questions I'm covered, but the last one will be, as we are advocating for a smoke-free generation in our lifetime, our fear is that there is increases per the presentation, that it is now the nicotine absorption will be, or the uptake of nicotine is increased. Are we not contradicting the initial decrease as promised prior of nicotine absorption with the initial one? Or as this has been alluded, or what will happen if our youth progress from vaping to cigarette, or there is no fear for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation. Professor, thank you very much for that support that you are giving to this bill. I think even what you are advising is welcome to the portfolio committee, that let's protect the next generation. I take that statement and instruction very serious as an irresponsible adult, that it is upon ourselves as parliamentarians to protect the younger ones. Coming to what you presented, Prof, I just want you to share experience on age restriction. In South Africa, we say an 18-year-old is an adult. In some countries, there's 21. I did not get you well when you were making a comparison on ages. Is this 18 that is a legal age? That restriction of given all what is happening regarding addiction. It may be addiction to smoking or addiction to vaping. Also, you are saying some schools are not accessible for your surveys or your educational programs. I think we need to assist also around that issue. We are also a stakeholder that can influence school governing bodies to allow educational programs such as these. Why I say so is, when the industry or whatever that is sold, when someone wants to kill the nation, he will market or sell something that is attractive to younger people. And when selling that, he will also, or she will also introduce some flavors and some colors so that it becomes attractive to younger ones. And also regarding the online, these digital platforms, what can you suggest? Because younger ones are so curious. How can we monitor? How can we make sure that younger ones do not access these online sales? I think as a portfolio committee, we have received some presentations before this one, and there were presenters that were introducing vaping or hookah as an alternative to smoking. And I think it is the opposite way in what you are presenting in front of us today. I just wanted to raise that, Chair, in appreciation of the support from Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kleko. Professor, your presentation, just to also add a bit, I hope I'm still audible. As I said it in my preamble, I would wish that a 14-year-old does not get involved into sexual activities, in as much as I also would want them not to vape. So maybe you'll assist. How should we carry on with this wave of education, notwithstanding that we are not making any input? Maybe we are not making any impact. We probably should, in terms of what we used to call teenage pregnancy. There's no more teenage pregnancy only now. There is underage or childhood pregnancy. A 9-year-old is not a teenager as yet. So we would wish to improve on those aspects. Now we are adding on this one, rightfully so. What should be the process? How do we, or who must lead in those campaigns? Is it somebody was saying education, health is a family or a household program? The department just improves or amends where things have not gone right, but there should be a start in terms of whole program should be in the families. Now, I'm raising this notwithstanding to say, I mean, honestly, because of the world we live in, if I were to have my teenager hooked to smoking, of the two devils, which one would I actually? This young one is doing that because there is now what we call a nicotine user. Now, would I be erring on the side of correction to say it's going to be for time that you are on the nicotine, but why don't we maybe be on a nicotine user, not of this bracket where I find you in as a smoker, and maybe long term you might quit, but become a nicotine user in a lesser strength than where you are. I respect very much that you are, and I don't want to stretch you beyond what you presented, because you are presenting and adolescents or young people. Are you probably wanting us to strengthen to say, because there are countries that have done that, ban completely the disposable vapes, because they are easily accessible to everybody else because of the being cheap, but also they have an element of being environmentally unfriendly. The batteries there are actually not free. So maybe then you leave citizens for the ones that are much more expensive, the rechargeable one, but the disposable don't allow them to be there. I just thought you should, because it's probably not possible to say, does this one country no vapes at all? You might then find them in another illegal way, but maybe on the side of allowing only the most expensive rechargeable ones, and the disposables ones, don't make them available. What would be your comments on that? Thank you very much. We will allow you to take us up to about 2 minutes after 4. Then you will stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those questions. There's a huge breadth of questions, some of them relating to adolescents, some relating to adults. I will try and provide my opinion across the board, because I do recognize that I sit as a cessation, I want to say expert, but a cessation practitioner. So let me answer your first question. If you had to ask me, would I prefer my child to smoke cigarettes or vape, I would argue that I would prefer my child to smoke cigarettes. Because when you are smoking cigarettes, and all of you who were at school, you didn't smoke them on the way to school in the car with your mother. You didn't smoke them in the bathroom. You didn't smoke them during class, in class, during chapel, immediately after school. You maybe sneaked one before school behind the bicycle shed if you had bicycles, or one after school. What we're seeing here is a huge exposure to nicotine. Early in the morning, during the class, in chapel, anywhere you possibly can. So I think the argument that they would have smoked anyway and vaping is the lesser harm amongst adolescents, I do not accept. I think the amount of exposure is hugely different. Following on from that, nicotine replacement therapy, it's one of these very strange things in South Africa, that nicotine is a Schedule 3 drug. And so if you're selling nicotine replacement therapy, which has undergone clinical trials to help you stop smoking, that's behind the counter in a pharmacy. I can walk up to the Philip Morris counter, buy my nicotine pouch with no problem, and use it from Cavendish Square or the waterfront or whatever. How we as South Africa allowed nicotine to be sold in the middle of a mall, but a drug for smoking cessation needed to be sold behind the counter, I don't understand. But also, the intention of nicotine replacement therapy is a 3-month program to get you off your cigarettes. The intention of vaping or nicotine pouches is a long-term addiction to a product that you weren't using before. So I think the issue around NRT and fresh air is that it is a strategy to get you to stop smoking. I do not prescribe nicotine replacement therapy for the next 10 years. It's a 3-month program strategy. So I think that is a completely different argument in relation to adolescent vaping. But if you want to ask the question about nicotine and NRT, it's a strategy to stop smoking. I'm going to come back to the issue of adults and what to do with them. In terms of disposable vapes, I know of a colleague that is apparently making a painting picture out of disposable vapes. I think they are going to be horrendous for the environment as much as tobacco and filters are. And so, yes, if we could ban disposable vapes, I see absolutely no reason why they should be available in the country. They are cheap, they are unregulated, they are potentially more dangerous than professionally made vapes. And so, yes, I would agree that a ban on disposable vapes would be fantastic. I am also a realist. We saw the ban on sales of tobacco during vaping, and the illegal market flourished. And so there's no question that an outright ban on vaping in South Africa will not work. However, much like alcohol, as a 15-year-old, you can't walk into a bar and buy a beer. At a 15-year-old, you can walk into a cafe and buy a vape product. And so putting regulations in place to reduce access is part of the protection. If you're 15 and you want a beer, you find someone to get you a beer. So there's no guarantee that any legislation is going to prevent everything, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think it's critically important to reduce access and availability. Similarly, with marketing, the fact that it's everywhere and anywhere is a challenge. With adolescents, and what we are encouraging our adolescents to do is to create their own content. For TikTok, for Instagram, adolescents must create content that is against vaping, that's pro fresh air, that's against addiction, because they're listening and watching each other. And so we need, as an approach to combat vaping, to get into the space that adolescents are. I'm not the face of TikTok. We need those young people to create their own content. In terms of the education, tomorrow morning I am speaking to the Department of Education in the Free State around vaping. I have spoken to the National Department of Health. I've spoken to the Western Cape Department of Education. Each Department of Education has these data because they all approve this work, and so they have the information. They are attempting to put the education in to schools. But when your grade 3s and grade 5s are vaping, we need to get this in very, very early. I think the conversation at a junior school is around prevention, much like sex, alcohol, drugs, traffic, all those kind of health education needs to happen at junior school. And for the high school learners, I think many need assistance to come off. Others need assistance to not start. In terms of how easy is it to stop vaping, it's particularly difficult. The level of anxiety and stress amongst high school learners is high. I don't at this particular point, because I sit at Groote Schuur in the public sector, have a clinical service for adolescents to assist vaping. I have spoken to many counselors and schools, and it is a struggle. There's the balance of dealing with a teenager who is a normal teenager and a teenager who is addicted heavily to a product to be able to get through their schools. There is no data from anywhere in the world the best approach to stop vaping. What is important is messaging. And this is from our study. We said to one of the adolescents, "Do you want to quit vaping?" And their comment was, "My mother said I shouldn't be a quitter, so I'm not going to stop." And so even simple messaging like "don't be a quitter" and calling quitting the approach to stopping vaping becomes important, because this is an area of addiction that we're seeing way more than we've ever seen before. I would also argue against the statement that tobacco cigarettes have come down as a result of vaping. I think that transition occurred probably during COVID, and the level of exposure to nicotine is significantly higher given the volumes of vaping that's occurring. And so reduced harm versus reduced exposure, again, I don't think applies to the adolescent because of the extensive amount of exposure. I would like to see, in terms of the bill, the complete ban of sales and both online and in shops to anyone under the age of 18. 18 is arbitrary. There's no neurobiological reason why 17, 18, or 19. And if you want to argue pure science, probably 21 would be the age where the risk of addiction starts falling off and your lungs are heading to the point where they are at their largest size. So the Europe is having a T21 approach where they're talking about the age of tobacco initiation potentially being 21. That's an argument for regulators to decide, but scientifically, 21 is a much better option than 18. I'm going to quickly come back to the issue of adults because it was asked of me. Again, I'm a pragmatist, a scientist, a clinician, and a researcher. If you absolutely cannot stop smoking, and we've tried everything, then yes, given the balance of the chemicals that are in vaping and the chemicals that are in tobacco, it is likely to be a safer alternative. Safe, not. Safer, potentially. One, the harms of nicotine still remain, and the harms are clear in cardiovascular hypertension risk. But yes, the cancer risks may drop down. I cannot promise that you will not drop dead of blue spotted vaping lung disease in 20 years' time. And you don't need 8,000 different flavors. You just need one flavor to replace your tobacco. And so I think the argument that it should be freely available to everyone misses the point that for that small group of individuals who absolutely cannot stop smoking, then potentially vaping as a harm reduction strategy may be of use. The challenge here is that the industry has marketed it as safer than and as harmless. And again, this comes back to the parents, where parents do not recognize the risks of vaping to their adolescent. And so they need, like the children, to be educated that yes, potentially may be safer than tobacco. And I said we can argue that until the cows come home. But in terms of safe to an adolescent developing brain, absolutely not. The last question is in terms of regulation. We have called for regulation of vaping since 2014. My first paper in 2014 said we should regulate. We haven't, to this point, regulated vaping. So to be honest, I don't care how we do it, in what format we do. We just need to protect our adolescents. Yes, for the adults, it's going to be important. If it's easier to put it together as a single bill, we should do that. If we want to compare it to nicotine in terms of nicotine replacement, well, then vaping products need to go through SAPRA and be regulated in that particular point. But I think we need to at least draw a line in the sand here for our adolescents to say no more to adolescents, and we can work out the details later. I'm just wondering, I think I have 1 minute left, if there was anything else. Education, I think I've mentioned. I have full access to any school that asks me, so that's not a problem. It's just that we couldn't access schools for the survey. But I know from every school I spoke to, I happen to have lots of friends who are principals in all sorts of schools around the country. Many are struggling and all are looking for assistance. So I think we need education department, both government and private, as well as non-profit agencies who are working in the wellness space to be on board. Do I need vaping products as a smoking cessation strategy? It's not something I turn to. I don't have great faith in it, but many things don't work in smoking cessation. Again, I don't need 8,000 flavors. If someone says to me, could I use vaping to help me stop? I would allow them and say that may be a strategy, but our goal has got to be to fresh air. And to answer the fresh air approach, the only country in the world that thinks that stopping smoking is vaping is the UK. The rest consider stopping smoking to be fresh air. And then with respect to the US, I think the US is a very unique market. I only showed one slide in terms of the data of the US, just to contextualize. The US, I think, in terms of how they've regulated what they have, is not necessarily always a public health issue. I think a lot of it is political, but I don't wish to open that can of worms. I think I probably have run out of time. If there are further questions, I'm happy to take them offline as a written submission. I'm more than happy to respond if that is appropriate. Thank you.
Yes. If there are any other questions, Prof, that you still need to support us more with responses, you are free to write to us through our secretary and add more. But thank you very much for your response and the inputs that you have made. Honorable members, we have had a pulmonologist from Grootes University. Now we are going to listen to a pediatrician from the same university. I hope they've got sharing rights. I don't know the name. All I know is that the Department of Pediatrics, it's at the UCT, is interested to make a presentation on this matter. Can I then allow them that your time starts now, 6 minutes past 4. So 25 to 5, you will have exhausted your time slot. Thank you very much. You can start.
Thank you very much. This is Tony Westwood. I want to make sure that you can see myself on your side, because I can't be sure that I'm visible to you.
We can see you. We don't see what you are presenting to us. We see you in classes. Look after.
That's fine. Well, I will just step back just one moment with you. Because I can't see how you can see me, but I'm wearing a T-shirt that says "Look after little lungs," and I brought 2 children with me. Children aren't generally allowed into Parliament, but I brought some with me just to help me illustrate, and they're listening to everything that we say this afternoon with very keen anticipation.
And they also greet us like you greeted us.
Yes, I'm sure they can. Here we are. Good day to you. Lovely to see you. And here's the other one. Here we are. Thank you. I will get sharing my screen. So we thank you very much for this. And have accelerated the work that you're doing to try and get this legislation out in the correct form across the country. There are 4 of us in the room from the University of Cape Town today. Let's see if my next slide will come up. My next slide is not moving on. There we go. So I am Tony Westwood, a registered pediatrician. We're all involved in protecting children's health in a number of capacities and ways and over many years. So a community pediatrician is a new breed who take population, geographical and health systems and services approach to children's health. The next 2 people on this list are both full professors at the university, acknowledged for their prowess and contribution in children's lung health, particularly working on the Drakenstein study, which follows a cohort of children from before they were born to the early years of life and possibly going later if they can get the funding. The study looks in extensive detail at many aspects of their growth and development, especially their lung health. And with us too, in helping present this, is Ms. Laurie Lake, who has led the content and the production of the Children's Institute's highly influential and authoritative annual Child Gauge, which I know many members will look forward to every year. Through that, we can communicate with policymakers such as those on this committee. I'd also like to report that I've written a book about lung health and tobacco and nicotine that aims to help children to help their parents and adults where they live to quit the habit. So the Department of Pediatrics is a key hub for child health in South Africa. We're in the business not only of treating children's diseases and disabilities, but also preventing such diseases and disabilities and optimizing the health and well-being of all children, including the unborn. We have received support for this presentation and our previous engagement in the written form from many colleagues in these organizations across the country. So the voices of some children have been heard in the recordings that were sent through with our written submissions in 2023, but they cannot represent themselves here. We don't claim to know everything that South African children want to say about the bill, but we are driven by the need to focus on children's health and well-being among the many voices that have been heard in these hearings. The rights of children are central to the heart of our nation, and we're convinced that the bill in its current form is in their best interests, especially its focus on protecting children from tobacco and nicotine, and from those who profit from them, and we are here to show why. Children are affected by tobacco and nicotine in a number of ways, even if they don't actually use them themselves. This can begin before they're born and continues throughout their childhood and to adulthood. The health and longevity of many adult caregivers is severely impaired. The air that children, and this affects their ability to look after their children. The health and the air that children breathe is polluted. Toxins from exhalations land on all surfaces and return to the air to be breathed in again. When I demonstrate this to children, I use some sherbet and we shower it around the room, and then we can clean it up there. But you can't clean up the chemicals from various exhalations associated with tobacco and nicotine in houses around the country. And in a country where 70% of children, it says 60% here, but 60 to 70%, depending on your definition, are living below the poverty line, money that could benefit children is being diverted into adults' addictions. And as far as pollution is concerned, it's not just the air, but the water and the ground that are polluted by these products. I was interested to hear pleased to hear the discussion about disposable electronic systems. Cigarette butts are among the commonest solid pollutants found in urban rivers, and data from the Poisons Information Centres that shows on average every 2 weeks they receive a call about a child who's ingested one of the many tobacco and nicotine products in this country. And lastly, and very crucially, children are developmentally primed to experiment. They must experiment to grow up. If they didn't experiment and go and try to put their finger into a plug hole, they wouldn't be growing up. We try and stop them putting their fingers into plug holes. And in adolescence, the phase of childhood where considerable amount of time are spent away from home, this is the most acute and dangerous when contexts are not geared to provide protection from the worst dangers. Adolescents are particularly susceptible, so we will focus only on a few things. The toxicity is most acute in small people for the reasons shown on this slide. They have higher breath rates, lung and bodies are undergoing development, and there are many reasons why children are particularly at risk. Carrying on this theme, we know that from nicotine, it gets right into the unborn babies with their forming organs and blood vessels at high levels through their mother's blood system, whether she is smoking herself or is exposed. The consequences are extensive and long-lasting. You see that allergies and infection susceptibilities are impacting on these children, these babies' circulations and lungs before they are even born. And nicotine uptake happens. Infant lung development is impaired with lifelong consequences. And while we're on the subject of nicotine, let's move on to the other end of childhood adolescence. Nicotine can affect brain development in this phase in ways that are likely to be permanent and are dose dependent. Those who have tendency to mental health problems are particularly at risk. So why, moving into children's rights, are we protecting children's rights? Children and adolescents are particularly susceptible to the toxic effects of tobacco, aerosolized chemicals, and nicotine through multiple mechanisms and in ways that can have long-term consequences for their health and well-being. Emerging evidence suggests that some of these could be passed on to the next generation through genetic and epigenetic mechanisms. Together, we have to work hard to protect them and give voice to their needs. So moving on to rights, the environmental rights of children we're starting with. We're obliged to protect these in international and South African law and progressively realise children's rights to safe environments. In this context, what we have shown so far, we start with these environmental rights. Everyone, adults and children, has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, and children have a right to a clean and safe environment to live in. The concept of the exposed home is very, very helpful for thinking about children. It's the sum of all factors a person is exposed to, which affect health through epigenetic and biological processes. So it could be physical, chemical, psychological, and social. Environmental exposures can occur in many ways over many years, so understanding them and mitigating them is what these rights demand of us. There are many other rights that we can bring in at this point, and we would like to emphasize the following. Best interests. When adults make decisions, they should think about how their decisions will affect children. All adults should do what is in the best interest, what is best for children. Governments must make sure that children survive and develop in the best possible way, including their lungs before they're born. Children have a right to give their opinions freely on issues that affect them. Adults should listen and take children seriously. And I know that you've heard from adolescents in your various presentations, and they were very clear on certain aspects. Adults should make sure that information children are getting is not harmful. And lastly, and very germane to what we're talking about today, governments must protect children from harmful drugs. In the light of this, there's also the state's obligation to protect children from harmful business practices. And there's a framework from this, from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child General Comment. And nowhere, well, in many ways, this is important, but in this particular context, extremely important that we are protecting, respecting, and remedying any practices that are inappropriate. I heard Professor van Zyl-Smit talk about this, the upper age of childhood, a developmental approach. We in pediatrics take a developmental approach. We understand growth and development over childhood. But development of brain doesn't end at the magic constitutional age of 18 years, nearer to 25, especially in males. So again, we need legislation that protects young adults from the depredations of nicotine and tobacco industries. So moving to the bill itself. First, the context of the bill. We know that it's unfinished business. We have still too many people exposed to the harmful effects of tobacco in too many contexts. The arrival has been described graphically more than once to this committee of the four forms of nicotine has significantly increased the risks to these groups. And South African evidence has not shown significant benefit to smokers of alternative forms of nicotine, but has shown very worrying levels of uptake of these new forms of nicotine among young people across the country, and demonstrated by the previous presentation. And the practices of the companies, this is the context, that produce and sell tobacco and nicotine products clearly aim to make addicts of young people, flying in the face of our constitution. And it's laughable, but also terribly tragic, that those same companies accuse this bill of being unconstitutional. I don't think I want to repeat in detail what you've just heard from Professor van Zyl-Smit, but it is very important that we take this very, very seriously. So now we're going to talk to what we support in the bill and why. So this is in general. It aims to further implement the Framework Convention of Tobacco Control, which South Africa has signed up to appropriately in order to protect South Africa's population from tobacco and nicotine. It aims to respond to an environment of rising risk for addiction and damage to health in South Africa, particularly among young people, from nicotine and aerosols. And it emphasizes primary prevention, but also secondary prevention. And in the terms of using the word smoke here, we're doing it in the same way as the bill, which is anything exhaled from any form of nicotine and tobacco product. But we also would like to emphasize that we're not just talking about those, we're talking about any nicotine product, and we think that needs to be strengthened in this bill. Section 2 talks to control over smoking. We think this is comprehensive and will improve the safety of children and young persons. It gives powers to local managers to protect the people whom they serve. Motor vehicles is a very, very important area, and I've seen people getting into buses going from hospitals where the driver is smoking. The value of legislation and legislators, us, you, in changing societal norms. So we have to put pregnant women, children and young people and non-smokers at risk. To do that is unacceptable, and the law should say so, and should say so strongly, and doesn't say so strongly enough yet, in our opinion. Going specifically to clause 2(1)(c), this should be strengthened. This is the one about vehicles, to including pregnant women, given the risk to both the woman and the fetus that she's carrying. That's a picture from my book, and a picture taken recently at a hospital where this approach has been taken, but the bill strengthens that to many, many other environments, which is very important. So we strongly support the bill's extensive curbs on all forms of nicotine delivery outside health services, as described very neatly by Professor Fensale-Smith. A very narrow purpose is here. In section 3 on advertising, so much of the advertising is blatantly aimed at young people in so many formats, online and other. This has to be severely curbed. The argument that genuine seekers of alternatives to cigarettes will be deprived of their right to information cannot trump the protection imperative. There are other safer ways of getting information to people who do smoke at the moment. We've said this also in relation to adolescent and young adult brains. So we have to curb displays, vending machines, and other ways in which this advertisement takes place, particularly social media. So recently, I went shopping at a shop that I won't go back to, because this is what I saw on the desk at the counter where I was getting my avocado pears. And I saw this on the counter in front of the cashier. And when I was in the queue, I saw this. Kenilworth Checkers should be ashamed of itself, and we should be ashamed of ourselves for allowing this to happen. So when it comes to standardized packaging, that will change that considerably. This is a central pillar of the framework of Convention on Tobacco Control. The evidence for its effectiveness in reducing the attraction of these products is clear, and it is very clear from the current marketing strategies for electronic delivery and other nicotine products that this needs to cover these products as well as tobacco products. It must not entice anyone, especially the young. We need to be clear that the bill does not call for plain packaging, which has been claimed would increase the illicit trade, but for standardized packaging, less attractive and giving important messages. Likewise, in the same context, going hand in hand with this is the need for health warnings that can take over space, and to emphasize a health warning over the brand name. Let's get our priorities right. There's a section 9 on restriction of sales that's spelt out in a lot of detail. What a pity that it has to be, but it has to be. But such is the nature of the industry that the bill and society are contending with. Many countries' experience has been that restrictions reduce usage among young people. And recently, Australia's tightening of restrictions has produced dividends in decreasing young people's use of these products and changing their attitudes. They've become more aware of harms, and seeing their use of these products as less acceptable. Our references are all at the end of these slide presentations. And this is through stringent restriction of sales. So there are other aspects that we're not focusing on here, like the monitoring committees, etc., which we support. But let's go on to what we're going to support here and what requires strengthening. 3 main areas. There is an inadequate definition of nicotine products that are not electronic or inhaled, pouches and many other new ones, and everybody will be trying to produce new nicotine ways to get people onto the products for life. So loopholes are easily found. So we have to find good, comprehensive wording And we've put an example here. To achieve this, a definition of relevant products in Section 1 should be amended to include pouches and similar products that contain nicotine designed for oral, nasal, and other mechanisms of delivery, feeling that this will cover things and we won't have to scrabble around when somebody invents a new way of getting nicotine into people. And we've already talked about Clause 2. The place of regulations is going to be essential. We need a strong, stringent bill. The regulations can then deal with some of the niceties that still need to be sorted out. We need opportunity then for regulating the place of nicotine products in weaning off tobacco cigarettes, as we heard earlier. Opportunities for regulating maximum nicotine concentrations in all products, and also other toxic substances, and toxic substances including all those flavorings. We support the idea that we need to get down to very simple things that we know what they are. They are regulatable and not attractive to young people or anybody for that matter. So there are opportunities in this bill and in regulations, particularly to strengthen tobacco use cessation programs, especially in the public sector. So I'll end with these two questions. Whose best interests are we serving, and whose environments are we trying to improve? It's not ours, particularly as adults, it's everybody's, but it's particularly children and adolescents, the unborn woman, the woman who's carrying a baby and the baby inside her. Where do we place our commitment in relation to this bill? To the rights argument, or to commercial imperatives, or to other economic things that don't add up to the best interests of children? And the time is now. The time was then, but we didn't do it. So the time is now. Thank you very, very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof, for your input and the greetings to those two little ones. Honorable members, let me then recognize you, those who want to engage with Prof's presentation. Again, we start with Honorable Chirwa Pungose, and the next one will be Honorable Motubase, number 2. The third one will be Honorable Dr. Letlape, number 4, Honorable Clark, number 5, Honorable Kumalo, number 6, Honorable Dr. Leroux, number 7, Honorable Shabangu. No other hand yet.
Number 8,
So-
Kleko. I'm not sure what's happening on my phone, Chair, but I
No,
will
you
be number
never
8.
raised. Your phone,
I've
your
raised
phone,
it.
your
It
phone
shows
is
on my
unable to
side.
raise. It does not show. Someone must assist you how to raise a hand with your. It shows itself, and it must show not to you but to all of us. We never
Okay,
see.
Chair, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Number
you,
1,
Chair.
Honorable Chirwa Mpungose, followed by Honorable Mutubase. Number 3, Honorable Dr. Letlape. 4, Honorable Clark. 5, Honorable Kumalo. 6, Honorable Dr. Leroux. 7, Honorable Shabang, and 8, Honorable Teko. In that order, honorable members, one after the other. Thank you.
Yeah, Bonga Slalo, greetings to everybody once again. Thank you so much to the presenters for that presentation. I have 2 questions, and it's in relation to your concluding sentiments on that the government must provide support to tobacco cessation programs. In the immediate, if we were to advise the Department of Health on how to go about this, which tobacco cessation programs would you advise them to provide support to that they currently aren't? And then secondly, I see you've highlighted which sections of the bill that you support, which I think assists the portfolio committee, and which ones need to be strengthened. Now, in relation to countering access to young people, which is also what you've presented on, are you of the view that the bill in its current form will be conducive in this manner? And thirdly, to that, beyond the bill, how should the Department of Health be going about dealing with issues of addiction and access to tobacco products for young people in particular, especially those that are underage, is, how else besides the bill should such programs be implemented? Thank you so much, Slav.
No, thanks. Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Prof, your concluding statement seemed to be mobilizing to say that the time is now. What is it that you would advise? And in part, I hear that having the sentiments of mobilizing civil society. What different can we do now that we did not do in the past? In particular, in relation to your emphasis on children being protected, do you think that we should emphasize on socialization of our children into society, in particular within the education system, because that's where they are socialized? And what can you recommend that be done in that regard? Sorry, I'm having some flu. So those are my two questions. And also, in respect to what is it that we can do in relation to implementation of regulations, implementation of our regulations, because we are well known of coming up with very good laws, but implementation becomes a problem, and we think that it is better to have a question whether we should cut the feet or to cut the shoe in order for the feet to fit the shoe. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. As per the rules, I only have 3 questions. My first question, and thank you for the presentation. My first question is about all-encompassing bill, and I have no problem with all nicotine related products being in one bill. But should that one bill regulate them the same way, recognize them the same way, and have the rules the same for all of them? Indoor use policy, advertising, marketing, etc. Or should there be differentiation? Because some of those products do not produce any aerosol or any smoke. The second question is related to what my colleague has just asked, but asked differently. The call to action. Do you have any idea why we failed before? And if the success will be dependent on legislation and enforcement? My last question, there's this issue that's coming up about prescription only or over the counter. Now,
I have no idea.
I don't know what happened, Chair, but it was not from my side. In relation to the issue of prescription or OTC, I mean, practically in this country, to my knowledge, there's only one cessation clinic in the public sector, which is in Cape Town. All other parts of our country don't have cessation clinics. Smoking and related behaviors are voluntary behaviors. How are we going to manage when we make it an OTC issue in terms of access to differentiated products? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not going to repeat the questions that have already been asked. Dr. Lechlapi did ask one of my questions, and I'll leave that up to you to answer. Prof, thank you very much for the presentation. When you say that there are safer ways to provide information to genuine seekers of alternatives to cigarettes, what are your suggestions in this regard? And then, do you view vaping as a viable way to stop smoking and eventually stop vaping or the use of other nicotine products for adults? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to all honorable members in the platform. Prof, let me take this opportunity to welcome your presentation and I really appreciate it. But I'm just having one question. You presented, Prof, the impact of exposure to nicotine on pregnant women and developing lungs, as well as child health and development. Then what is your opinion on the impact of nicotine-containing products, such as nuts and nicotine pouches, on pregnancy and children? These products, we have been made to understand, are consumed orally and deliver nicotine in large amounts. That is my question, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Westwood, for your presentation. And yeah, I think that we share your concern about the impact of smoking on children. I think that there's one. I just wanted to get your perspective on the UK approach with where they've replaced vaping. They gave out vapes to mothers who smoked, trying to bring the smoking rates down. I mean, obviously there was still some exposure there, but they felt that that was a less risky approach. And so I'd just like to get your perspective on that, and whether that makes sense to you from a public health and from an individual child perspective. I guess the other question is around the exposure to children, and particularly in cars or at home. And I think it's again a sort of an ethical, sort of philosophical question. But the some of the things that are built into the bill in terms of punishment for that are quite harsh, and so it's a difficult one to manage, where children might be seen as being abused by their parents when they're smoking in the house. And so I just wanted to get your perspective on that, whether you feel the punishments are proportionate or fair, or might actually cause child harm as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Prof, for your presentation, which is widely covering the focusing on the health of the children and adolescents. It's really appreciated, because that's one of the vulnerable groups, and we are also very much focused on that age group to make sure that they are not affected by these nicotine products, including the vape that is so much in the market. One of the questions was asked by one of my colleagues, Honorable Clark. I hope when you respond to that question on the safer ways, you will be unpacking what is in your mind regarding the safer ways that you are suggesting. But the other question that I have, Prof, if maybe you can clarify us. You spoke on this on the youth, the pregnant mother, the effect of nicotine on the pregnancy. But then, what if you can maybe clarify us, or this committee, on the effect of nicotine on the developing mind of the adolescents, the developing brain versus the nicotine exposure, also outlining the content of exposure. Thank you, Chairperson. Those are my few questions, and I really appreciated this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me greet the professor there and appreciate his availability and interest to the processing of this bill, the input and the recommendations that he has made are welcomed. I think as a portfolio committee, we need to make time so that we look at the certain clauses that he is proposing some inclusions and amendments. As a committee, we need to look at that and see the possibility of including those recommendations. Coming to what was also presented, Chair, I appreciate the fact that what was said by most tobacco industries or representatives from the industry always saying one has a right to smoke. Professor has put it strongly that it's in the Constitution that everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being. We've been saying that your rights must not infringe on my own rights. They have a right to smoke, but those that are not smoking also have a right of not being exposed to whatever that is coming from the smoke or whatever. Thank you for having that as in your input, Prof. Also, I have a question around the smoking areas. What's your advice in regulating smoking and vaping areas? That we are talking about children, because some of younger ones and some of these smoking areas are in restaurants, and in restaurants you can find children or younger ones. How do you think we can regulate around there? Is it enough what is proposed in the bill, or is there anything that you can suggest as part of your presentation? And also on the issue of e-cigarettes and vapes, do you think we must regulate them in the same way? I think secondary smokers are the most vulnerable ones. Sometimes as parents, we role model to the younger ones. The more the younger ones are exposed to smoking or vaping, the more they will be interested, because younger ones are so curious and they will end up being addicted. Thank you very much for your input. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, honorable members. And I'm also covered with your questions, except for one. I wanted just to check on the two. So it's not something that one is not familiar with, the nicotine and the pregnancy. Would you probably say a pregnant mother who is using a nicotine pouch is probably better off than if they were smoking? But again, if we were to actually stop, how do you stop and regulate mothers who are pregnant and are smoking? The third and the last one for me is the one that asked from Prof. We may not be able to successfully ban all vapes in the country, but maybe we as a committee we might err on the side of banning the usable, the ones that are disposable. What would be your view on that, and leave only the ones that are more expensive, rechargeable one? What would be your view on that one? Please respond, and we will allow you just up to about 5 to 5, and then we will have to wrap up at that time. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the esteemed members for your questions. Between us, we will try and answer. The majority will be me, but I would ask my colleagues to put their hands up, Chair, if that's okay, if they wish to add something to what I've said. Going back to the beginning, and it's been such a lot of questions that this is not so easy. The Department of Health's approach, and I think the important thing is that we can do things now in terms of smoking cessation and reducing use of vapes. I found that word coming out of my mouth. It's not a word I usually use, because it's so I would prefer to say nicotine products. I think this bill will work. I think it gives us, for many reasons, why the lack of advertising, the changing of flavors, the regulation of ability to actually see the products and see people using the products will make a big difference. When it comes to tobacco cessation, I don't think we're doing enough now. I don't think the Department of Health has given enough resources to this. Remember that this is very much associated with mental health services. That for any drug or addiction, whether it's behavioral addiction or a drug addiction, you require a holistic approach. And that is, I think that we have still a way to go in making sure that our practitioners and our health services are giving enough emphasis and weight, and us as society enough funds to mental health support, including that for things like tobacco cessation and nicotine addiction. So that would be my response to that question. We've got work to do. We can be doing it now. We don't have to wait until this bill has come through and become an act and the regulations are all developed. So we do want to accelerate that as fast as possible. So let's do that more now, and we all have a responsibility in improving mental health and reducing addiction across the spectrum in this country. Moving on to a similar question about socialization and education. Thank you for that. Yes, the bill will make things easier in that respect because we will have stronger legislation, we will have less advertising. We'll have much more difficult to find point of sale than has been described how easy it is at the moment and how I demonstrated how easy it is to get influenced by these things. But at the same time, we do need a societal approach, and through the schools, as has come up today already, is a very important process. I have developed a little workshop for young children on how lungs work and how tobacco and nicotine affect them and how they can make a difference. But I'm sure within our life orientation, there are plenty of opportunities to make this happen and need to be systematized more than they are at the moment. Regulations will also help with this bill once we get beyond that. I do think that an all-encompassing bill, we do think that an all-encompassing bill is essential in South Africa at this time. The differentiation in what's in at the moment, there is differentiation, but the principles of not being able to see these things, not having attractive ways in which they are advertised and shown to people are the same. So a one bill for the lot, like one ring to rule them all in the Lord of the Rings, we have to go there. There's no we mustn't try splitting. We can work on any things that are specifically needing to be thought about in relation to non-tobacco products. But at the moment, we believe that the bill is good for both. I would also point that, again, to mental health support. Why did we fail? Because we don't do enough around mental health. We also had too much exposure. We haven't fully implemented so many important aspects of the framework convention. We're going in that direction. We must continue to go in that direction. And it's a great shame that this was started in 2018 and here we are in 2025. I will say that COVID wasn't helpful. Moving on also to tobacco cessation. With all these things, we need a holistic approach. So when it comes to providing information to people, it must be provided in a context where it is part of a therapeutic relationship as far as possible. Now, that can be in groups in schools, it can be in groups in churches, mosques, it can be groups at community level, but information needs to be correct, medically appropriate, and given in a supportive environment. It's no good, it's not right to just put it out there, particularly when it's put out there in the context of many forms of product that can be used. This needs to happen within that setting, and so I'm moving towards the idea in my discussion now, in answer to your questions, that this has to be in clinical or quasi-clinical contexts. For viable cessation. The place of these products in cessation, I think that's still work in progress. And I appreciated Prof. Van Zyl-Smith's approach, where it would be on a one-to-one approach. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all here, and we need to know more about this. I'm a pediatrician, so I'm not an expert beyond that in terms of tobacco and nicotine cessation. In terms of the snus and pouches, yes, honourable member, those high, rapid increase in levels are much more likely to produce addiction, much more likely to affect cardiovascular systems of unborn babies, their mothers, and teenagers and young people, and anybody who uses those products unregulated. So those dangers are out there for us. We really need to be dealing with that. I see that Anissa's hand is up, so I'm going to ask her to carry on with what she would like to say. This is Professor Vanker. Thank you, Anissa.
Thanks, Prof. Westwood, and thank you to the committee for allowing us, all the honourable members, for allowing us to be part of this. I think we would, can you hear me, Tony?
Yes.
And all? Yes. I think just to raise, many of the honourable members brought up the point about nicotine, and I think we really, really want to drive home the point of nicotine addiction and the impact of nicotine on children, babies, infants, and the adolescents and the developing brain. Prof. Westwood put up the slide showing that babies born to smoking mothers had levels of nicotine that were the same as a smoker. And I think that is really, really an important point to drive home, that we have to look to protect our future generations. We also know that these early life exposures have lifelong consequences. So exposed babies have impact on their brain, driving addiction later, as well as their lung function, their lung development, and leading to many, many lifelong diseases, lung conditions in adults. So I think, so that's one of the key points that I just wanted to come in on as Prof. Westwood carries on. Thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. And in fact, I'm going to ask Professor Di Gray to respond to the question about the UK approach of giving nicotine-containing inhaled products to mothers who were smoking. I'll just quickly say that is an exception, and it's not internationally recognized practice. And I think that it still comes with particular risks, but I'd like to hear Professor Gray. Thank you, Di.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Sorry, may I continue? Yeah. Okay. So there was a question about the UK approach, and thank you for pointing out that it was actually quite extraordinary. Certainly that approach lacks any safety or scientific backing whatsoever. And so, as you've just heard from Professor Vanker, a completely risky thing that was undertaken to try and prevent the unborn child. And I think I just wanted to make a very clear point that speaks to many of the points, that we have two issues. We have inhaled substances that harm lungs, and we have nicotine. So sometimes that's being taken through the mouth, and sometimes that's being inhaled. Both of those are very dangerous to children. They're of course also dangerous to adults, but the developing brain, the developing lung is very vulnerable to these. And we are all responsible for allowing the current epidemic of youth who are addicted to nicotine. There was nothing 10 years ago that suggested that this was safe, and evidence has shown us that it is very unsafe. And so I just really want to put out the call that the thing that we can do is to move as fast as we can to limit the access of this either for youth being able to acquire it, but also in our very clear messaging. There was a question around cessation and what we could do other than what we're already doing. We can switch off the tap. We now have a whole generation of youth who are addicted to a substance they don't need to be addicted to. I'm sure I know that you've heard a lot about this, but I cannot emphasize it enough that we need to move fast, because this is a disaster that is unfolded before our eyes. And also,
I'm going to stop you, Di, just because we've only got 1 minute left, or less than a
yes,
minute.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So quickly on punishments, we always take a whole family approach to any time where children seem to be affected by the behavior of their parents. So this would not be the start, but it's good to have potential sanctions for these. But speaking for children, we're always trying to keep them in the family context, in their social contexts. But we do need big sticks as well for certain infractions. We're very much against the normalization of aerosols in society. And in relation to disposable vapes, yes, with our environmental hats on, we do think that's one set of products that I think it would be very reasonable for the country to say, no, they may not come in. And I think I'll hand back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. We've just gone a minute over.
No, thank you very much for your input, and thanks for the responses, including those from other colleagues. Yeah, we really have been greatly enriched by our presentation. So we will hope that if there are any other outstanding issues that you'd like to raise with us, please forward them again to the committee. Secretary who can then benefit from that. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you very much. All the best for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. UCT has been very heavy on us today. Now, another third presentation is from UCT. It's a research unit on economics of excisable products. I don't know who's presenting there. Can that presenter also be allowed to be given sharing rights? And your time starts around 3 minutes to 5. Just before 5:30, the presentation would have stopped. Then we'll engage with the presentation as members. You take pen and paper. Thereafter, you come back, give responses. So we give to the UCT team that is presenting on the research unit on economics of excisable products. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I just confirm that you're hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you and you can see your presentation. Thank you.
Super. So, Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity, and honourable members, thank you very much for the chance that we have to present to you on this very important piece of legislation. So my name is Corné van Walbeek. I am the Director of the Research Unit on the Economics of Excisable Products, abbreviated to REAP. We are based at the School of Economics at the University of Cape Town. I am delighted to be able to follow in the steps of my colleagues from different departments. So our focus is going to be primarily on the economic aspects related to the bill. A lot of things have been said about that, but before I get to that, I'd just like to briefly introduce the unit to you. So we are an independent research unit. We're based at the University of Cape Town, specifically within the School of Economics. The team consists of 8 economists. We've specialized in the economic aspects of tobacco and alcohol in South Africa and globally. Between the 8 economists, we've got years and years of experience of doing research on various aspects related to these 2 products. So our goal is to advance public health through rigorous and independent research. We are also the hosts of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control Knowledge Hub on Tobacco Taxation. Around the world, there are 9 different knowledge hubs, each focusing on different aspects. For example, legislation, smoke-free products, tobacco interference, international relations, and so on. So we were chosen in 2015 to become the knowledge hub on tobacco taxation, and the Minister of Health at the time in 2018 officially launched the knowledge hub within this unit. So our funding is primarily from foreign donors. Our main funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but we've also received substantial amounts of funding from Cancer Research UK, Vital Strategies, and other institutions as indicated. We are completely independent of any industry whose products we are looking at, specifically the tobacco, alcohol, and related industries. We've never taken money from them, and we will never do so either. We have no conflicts of interest to declare, and we would like to state it upfront that we strongly support the bill. So if one looks at the context in which this bill is taking place, we've got very many challenges in South Africa. And some people would say, why are you worrying about tobacco if you've got so many other things? Well, Chair, there are so many people that are affected by tobacco. It causes around 31,000 deaths in South Africa on an annual basis. That is approximately 7% of total deaths. At the same time, smoking cost the economy about 42 billion rand in 2016, according to a study that was conducted and was published in 2021. If we upscale those numbers to take account of inflation, that number at the moment is in the order of 70 billion rand. That's the annual cost associated with tobacco. It consists of both the direct costs, the costs of illness, but also the indirect cost, in other words, the cost associated with the loss of income, etc. If one compares that to the contribution, one would often hear the comment being made that, yes, tobacco taxes contribute so much to the treasury and so on. To be fair, Chair, there is actually no comparison. The costs are substantially more substantial than the revenue that the government or that society gets through this industry. We are all aware that the prevalence of tobacco use and ends is rising. In 2010, less than 20% of people in South Africa, of adults in South Africa, used tobacco products. In 2021, according to the Global Adult Tobacco Survey, that percentage has increased to 24%. So there's been a substantial increase in tobacco use, and equivalently, there's been a very substantial increase in the use of electronic cigarettes, as well as other nicotine products. So our last legislation was implemented in 2008. Since then, there has been nothing. If we have a look at something as basic as health warnings, the health warnings that we currently have are 30 years old. They were last literally implemented in 1995. There has been no change ever since then, and it's very clear that we are very much running behind the rest of the world in terms of implementing appropriate legislation. So what I'd like to address at this presentation is to spend quite a bit of time talking about illicit trade in tobacco products. And the reason for that is I've listened to a large number of presentations, and each time illicit trade comes up as being the thing that would then prevent the government from passing this piece of legislation. I want to provide some historical context about illicit trade. I want to provide an estimate of what is happening at the moment, where does the illicit trade come from, and I would like to draw on a lot of research that we've conducted over the past 5 to 10 years, specifically focusing on illicit trade. So in the team that I represent, I reckon we've produced at least 15 published papers on the various aspects related to illicit trade in South Africa. Then I want to talk about what can we learn from history, especially from the 1999 legislation. And then in my last comment, I want to just talk about specifically the employment issue that has been mentioned quite a number of times, and I would just like to give some context to that. So, Chair, it is true that illicit trade is a huge problem in South Africa. Our estimates suggest that it's at the moment about 60% of the market. The tobacco industry would make you believe that it is more than that. Whether it is 60% or 70% or even 75%, the point is it is a very, very significant problem. I would like to emphasize, Chair, that illicit trade is not a legislative issue. It is also not a tax issue. And I'm going to show you in a moment's time that over the past 15 years, excise taxes have not increased by much at all. And there has been a huge increase in illicit trade over the past 15 years. It's not driven by increases in the excise tax, despite what the tobacco industry would want to make you believe. What is illicit trade? It is a criminal issue. It is a criminal issue in that there are companies and criminal gangs that are selling these products to people very cheaply, where it is impossible that the excise tax could have been paid. And unfortunately, we are in this position essentially because of criminal activity of companies that are involved in this activity, but also because of a lack of attention by the law enforcement authorities and by our revenue authorities to stop this type of activity taking place. We don't have track and trace systems. We don't have other systems in place that are regarded as best international practice to curb illicit trade. And I want to talk about that, and I'm sure there might be some questions coming up regarding that. So if we have a look at what has happened over the last 20 or so years. This is work that has been published by my colleague Nicole Velios and myself. And what we've done using a so-called gap analysis, we have estimated what has been the and what you will notice, Chair, is that up until the year 2009, illicit trade in South Africa was essentially a non-issue.
Well, my lord, it is the defense.
I just want that to be clear, because the law doesn't permit me to introduce
Since then, there has been no
document
legislation
after
at
you've
all.
closed your case.
But what we are seeing is a
and
very,
any of
very
the
significant
accused
increase in
invoke
illicit
Section
trade.
174.
Yes, in fact, my
There's
lord, the
been a
report will
number
recall that we
of,
said will
phases.
neaten up
I want to
our
focus specifically on
submissions
the phase
regarding
between
Taban Makaleni, which we have
2014
since done.
and 2018.
And we point
And then
out
also
that
the
it's
period
actually an
from
oral
2019
statement that
through to
he
current,
made
the
to
current situation.
Warren of Sustain
And what you will notice,
on
Chair,
the
is
27th
there
of
was
October
an increase in
2014, and
illicit
it's
trade
already on
in the
record.
early
It was introduced
2010s.
by the defense
Illicit
themselves,
trade was
who
becoming a
referred to a
significant
few
problem.
places
It
in the
was very
record
much monitored
where
by
the
SARS,
court,
and,
where the
you
defense
remember that
cross-examined
there were
on that
specific
document.
bodies that were focused on illicit trade,
But because
embedded in
Steyn-
SARS,
Steyn
and
comes.
those were
Yes,
subsequently
Warren of Sustain
Steyn
abolished
didn't give evidence.
under
No, no, she
the
hasn't.
She made an affidavit.
leadership
Indeed,
of
which
Mr.
forms part
Tomoyane,
of
who took over
Exhibit
at
J.
SARS
Was it
in
was that
2014.
affidavit ended
Because
up
of
also?
the fact that
Yes, it
those
forms part of Exhibit J, yes.
special units, specialized
was
units that
handed
focused on illicit
Mr.
trade were
Khumalo,
abolished.
do you confirm
Basically,
it?
it was a situation
No,
of the
it's
cat
a
is away, the
report.
mice
Yeah,
will
yeah, fine,
play,
I hear you.
and we had
About the
this
fact
very
that the
substantial
evidence,
increase
alleged
in
evidence, which
illicit
was
trade in South Africa. As I will
added
point
up
out in a moment's time, this increase in
concerning
illicit trade was not
Makalani.
necessarily smuggling. There was
It
a
was
little bit
done-
of
I don't know.
smuggling, but
It
most
was
of
done
the
by
illicit
who?
trade in South
The point
Africa
is-
in this period and subsequently
I'm saying
is
I didn't
because
do it.
of local
I'm not allowed to do
producers
it.
that are
Just
simply
want to
not
place it on
declaring
record.
the amount of cigarettes that they
After
are
you have
producing.
started
You will
your
recall,
application
Chair,
for
that in
Section
2018, Mr. Moyane
174,
was replaced by
the
a
evidence
new
is
commissioner at SARS,
standardized
and things
and
looked as
static
though they
as
were
it
going
is.
to improve.
The court
Unfortunately,
can
what happened
introduce
is during
new
2020, the
evidence
sales
because
ban, and
defense
subsequently,
has
we see
closed
that
its
illicit
case.
trade
And
jumped to
you
very, very high levels
are
in the late
attacking,
50s, even
assailing
up to 60%.
the defendant's
And even
case.
though this diagram over here
That's why
stops in
I'm not
2022,
allowed to.
informal estimates from our side suggest that
There
the
are two
illicit market in
divergent
2023
decisions
and
in
in
our courts.
2024 was in the order of the
State
high
versus
50s or even
Bosolo.
the low 60% over there.
It's an SCA
So
case.
basically, there were two
And
things
then
that happened. On the
there's
one
another
hand,
case
we've got
also.
this, let's call it challenge of governance at SARS. And on the
versus
other
Raw.
hand, over here, we've
R
got
versus Raw.
the sales ban. And since the sales ban, there has not
Okay.
been a return to normality.
So
This is another way of looking
sure
at
that
the total South
it's
African
not
cigarette
me who
market. From
introduced that.
1990
I couldn't
through
introduce
to
anything.
2000, we
No,
don't
no.
actually
Unless I
have
mention
numbers
that I'm
for
doing
illicit
so in
trade. We
terms
don't
of
have
Section
estimates.
186.
But everything suggests that illicit
Yes,
trade in this
it is
time
already on
period
record,
was
and
not
I've just
a
had a
problem.
look
We don't see it
at
in
Exhibit
the
J. It's
newspaper reports. We
indeed
didn't see
under
it
oath.
in the tobacco
introduced it
industry
anyway?
reports. Since we started
My lord,
monitoring illicit
when
trade
we
from
go back
2002 onwards, it's
on
very
the
clear
record,
that there's been
we
a
see that
huge increase
during
in
the
illicit trade,
cross-examination of Ms. Zandi
and at the same
Khumalo,
time there's been a
on the
huge
20th of
decrease
July
in the legal
2023,
trade of cigarettes.
during the
On the
cross-examination of Mr. Ramusepeli,
secondary vertical axis, I've got the price,
yes,
or rather,
when
excuse me, the
cross-examining
excise tax
Ms. Zandi
of cigarettes in
Khumalo,
logarithmic form.
he
Basically,
referred to it,
why one does that is one wants to
and
focus
it's
on
page
the
7
trend in the percentage change of these
on the
this
20th
thing.
of July
So what we see
2023,
is from the early 1990s
lines 1
onwards,
to
we see there
4,
was a very rapid increase in the
and
excise tax
also
on tobacco.
on the 8th
From
of
about
November
2010
2024,
onwards,
during
there
the
was a very,
cross-examination
very modest
of Brigadier
increase in the
Gininda,
excise tax
Mr.
on
Ramusepeli referred
cigarettes
to it, and
at a rate of about 1 or 2% per year,
here, my
whereas
lord, we
over this
specifically
period,
referred to
the rate of
Makaleni,
increase was in the order of
the
about
cross-examination of
10%
Makaleni.
of
8th of
increases in
November
the real
2024,
excise tax, the
page 53,
inflation-adjusted
lines
excise
6 to
tax
22.
on
That's where
on tobacco taxation.
Mr.
So the
Ramusepeli
point that the
canvassed
industry often makes is
the
the
oral
very big
statement made
increase
to
in illicit trade
Warren of
is because
Sustained Camp
of
with Brigadier
an
Gininda.
increase in the excise tax. Chair, that is simply not true. There's been very, very modest increases in the excise tax over this period. At the same time, there's been a very, very sharp increase in the illicit trade. That is criminal. That is not just a rational response to high excise taxes.
I did
It is
cross-examine Ms.
something much more
Zandi
sinister
Khumalo,
than that.
specifically
So
regarding
this is what I
the
basically
people
alluded
that were
to.
in
We
the
had institutional
house
failures at SARS. We
regarding
had
their
the sales ban of
description
2020. They both greatly
of
boosted
the second
illicit trade.
intruder.
BATSA played a
not touch
particularly
anything
pernicious
on
role.
Makaleni
Now they would come
with
to you and they would
witnesses.
suggest to you that we are your partners, we are
And
here
my
to
lord, we must
support
be
you.
very...
No, it's
They
okay.
were
All I'm
not
saying, I
our
want to
partners when they were
ascertain
significantly
is
undermining SARS
it doesn't
in
matter
the
who
period
handled
from
that
2014 through to
cross-examination.
2018 when they
All I
were
want
at
to
the
ascertain is
forefront of
it was handled
undermining
before
SARS
Mr.
in its
Khumalo
attempt
began his
of
174
looking into the
applications.
illicit trade
That's all the law
in South
says.
Africa, for example, through
Okay,
the
fine,
tobacco
no problem.
task team. This is not us making this up. This has been well published in both the Zondo Commission and in the Nugent Commission that looked into governance issues at the South African Reserve, at the South African Revenue Service. Important, Chair, is that most illicit cigarettes in South Africa are produced within South Africa. These are factories that are based here because we do not have a track and trace system, because we do not have CCTV cameras. Many of these factories are producing cigarettes much more than what they are declaring, and these cigarettes are entering the South African market
Okay,
very, very
let's
cheaply.
start. You'll decide
So
about
the
it.
tobacco industry would make you
Yes,
would
you
want to
can
make you
continue,
believe that fighting illicit trade needs to happen first. We first need to get our illicit trade under control, and then we can implement this legislation. That is not true. We can do both at the same time. It's important to fight illicit trade, but it's also important at the same time to implement this legislation that is there to protect the population.
Firearm and ammunition is
The
well
tobacco industry is
established.
using
The
the
mere
illicit
fact
trade
that the
argument
accused
essentially as
participated
a red
in a
herring
robbery
to
where
try and
his
delay the
co-perpetrators
implementation
possessed
of
firearms does
a
not
set of
sustain
regulation and
beyond a
legislation
reasonable doubt
that
when the
they
inference
do
that
not
the
like.
accused are possessed the
So, Chair,
firearms
you asked
jointly
where
with
are
them.
these cigarettes? Based on the
In
Global
S
Adult
versus
Tobacco Survey that
Ngozi,
was conducted in
1998, volume 1,
2021 by the South African Medical Research
284,
Council and
open
other
bracket,
units,
close
we've got a
bracket.
pretty good
Lapho
idea
kwakhuluma khona-ke,
of what the
ngesevivinyo-ke
brands
uma
are
wesebuka-ke
that are
udaba
illicit. So if I can
lwebhamu-ke
quickly go through
ehlangene
this,
lapho-ke futhi
here we've got the
nezinhlamvu-ke
brands
lapho-ke la bathi khona-ke
by
uma ngaba-ke amsolwa futhi nabanye
ranked
asebenzisane
by
nabo-ke
market
noma
share. So
babambisene
the biggest
nabo-ke
brand in
batholakala
2021
bethe
was still
ibhamu
Peter Stuyvesant.
lokho kuhambe
And as you
kanjani-ke
walk down,
futhi
you can
baze
see that
bacaphuna
the brand shares are becoming increasingly
labanye-ke
smaller.
futhi-ke
But what you also see is
umbuso
on the
ubhekene
last
necala
column,
lakankosi
the percent or the prevalence of
ngaphansi
illicit cigarettes
kovolume 1
of that
ye-CCR
particular brand.
kumanye wamacala-ke wala
And
eNingizimu
the
Afrika.
way that we did this
It was
was
held that
we
this
knew
is
from the
it was held
respondents
that this is only
which cigarettes they were
justifiable
buying. We
if
also
the
asked the respondents,
factual
or the
evidence
survey asked the
excludes
respondents,
all
what was
reasonable
the price
inferences other than
that was being paid.
A,
We used the
that
so-called threshold
that
measure
the
and
group
said
had
below a
the
certain price
intention
it is
to exercise
impossible for the
possession
full
through
tax to have
the
been
actual
paid
denter,
and for there to be a
and B,
reasonable
actual
allowance
denter
made
had
for the
the
retail
intention to hold the
margin, for the wholesale
guns
margin,
on
and for the cost
behalf
of production.
of the group.
And what you are seeing over here,
Only
Chair,
if
is
both the
the
requirements are
names of the
fulfilled
brands,
can there
for
be a
the
joint possession
registered
involving
owners of
the
these
group
brands.
as
These
a
are
whole.
South African companies, as well as
Lapho-ke
the
kukhuluma ukuthi
prevalence
lapho-ke
of
uma ngabe
illicit.
mhlawumbe
And the numbers that I've
lokhu kutheleleka-ke ubufakazi
highlighted in red
bakhona-ke
are
lapho
the problematic
khona-ke
brands.
mhlawumbe isizathu
And
esibangela noma
in
mhlawumbe
total,
ucabanga
using a
okungenangqondo
completely
lapho
different
khona
methodology in
inkulumo ukuthi
2021,
lo daba
this
lolu-ke uma mhlawumbe asithi
estimate
mhlawumbe-ke abantu
suggests that
basebenzisa-ke ibhamu bey'qembuke
59.2%
lapho-ke
of
ukuthi
all
kuvame ukuthi
cigarettes
kuhambe kanjani-ke futhi
consumed in South
ukuthi
Africa
abavame
were
ukuthi
in
bayibhukhe
fact sold at
noma
a price where it
bayibukisise-ke
is
lapho-ke
impossible
kulolu
for
daba
the
lolu-ke
excise tax to have been made. This
This
information
court in S versus Ambuli
is
2003,
available
Volume
to
1,
National
SACR
Treasury, has
97,
been shared with National
SCA
Treasury, and has been shared with SARS.
pointed
It
out
gives
that
the
where
authorities
the
a
offense
very,
is
very
a
good
possession
idea of what
of a firearm,
the nature of the
open
illicit
bracket, or
market is
in
in South
that
Africa.
case,
Yes, there are
a
some smuggled cigarettes as well,
hand
but a
close
very
bracket.
large
It
proportion.
is
I
not
can't
a
give you a precise
it is
number,
not the
but
principles
definitely
of
more
a
than
common
70,
purpose
80% of
have
cigarettes that are illicit in South
that have
Africa are in
application,
fact
but
manufactured
rather those
in
are
South
relating
Africa.
to joint possession. A
I don't want
condition
to spend
of
time
joint
on this
possession
one.
can
I
only
would
be
like to spend a bit of time talking
complete
about
if
history.
more than one person
And
possesses the
specifically,
firearm.
I want to take you
The
back
court
to the
found that mere
1999
knowledge by
legislation.
others
The 99
that one member
legislation
of a
was
group
important for
possessed
two
a
main
hand,
things. There were
generate,
other things
or
as
even
well, but the two main
acquisition
things was that it
it
would ban
to its
advertising
use of the
completely,
execution
and
of
it
their
would
own
make
common
all
purpose.
public and work
Lapho futhi
areas
kade bekhuluma
smoke free.
khona-ke nelinye-ke icala noma kade
The
kwelinye-ke icala
resistance by the
lombuso
tobacco
olubhekeneke
industry was
necala
immense.
lakambuli-ke
One would have
ngembuli-ke
thought that
lapho-ke
the world is going to come
langomnyaka
to an end if
2003
we
la
are going
bakhuluma
to
khona-ke
implement
ngodaba lokuthi
this
uma ngabe-ke
particular bill.
abantu kade behamba bey'qembu
The
kuphethe-ke
industry
ibhamu lapho-ke
made
kuvame
all
ukuthi mhlawumbe
kinds
kusebenze
of
kanjani-ke
very, very
futhi nokuthi
strong
usuke
suggestions
basebenza-ke
that
ngaphansi
this is going
kwenhloso-ke
to cause
eyodwa lapho-ke
huge
ekuthizeni-ke
disruption to
benze
the
lokhu
different
abakwenzayo-ke
industries.
noma inhloso
This is going to
evamile
cause
eyodwana
a
mayelana
collapse
nesicelo
of the
sabo
restaurant
mayelana nodaba
industry, of the
lwabo-ke
hospitality
abalwenzayo
industry,
lapho-ke mayelana
and
nodaba
they got a
lolu-ke
number
noma-ke
of
ukuvuma ukuthi yebo kade bekhona
alliance
omunye
partners to
wabo
make
kade
this
aphethe
kind of
ibhamu lapho-ke
statement.
thizeni babulale-ke
As a
futhi
result of
benza lokho
this,
ngenhloso
the
evamile.
government eventually agreed to make
Paragraph
up to
32.
25% of space in the
That case of
hospitality
Mboli,
outlets
was it correct
available
and
to
decided?
smokers subject to certain conditions. It was never part of the original
I'm asking
intent.
everybody.
So the question is, how did it
Decided.
eventually
I
pan
know
out?
he was involved.
So the research that
he
we
did say
conducted in
he was
2005, in other
allegedly
words, about
part of a group
4 years
of,
after the implementation of these
males
rules in 2001, we
entered
conducted a
and robbed
telephonic
a
surveys of
bank
more than 1,000
in
restaurants,
Silverton, I think.
and essentially what we came to the
He had a
conclusion
hand
is
grenade
there was some
apparently in his
implementation
car.
costs, especially for some of these restaurants,
So he
to
was charged, obviously.
implement the
Even with,
smoking only
I think it
areas
was
within their
correctly
restaurants.
decided
In
because
terms of the
I think
impact that
they
it had
argued
on
that
the revenues,
the other
the answer was it
accused
had
wouldn't have known
an
that he has a hand
unbelievably
grenade.
small amount of impact on
I
their
remember that
revenues.
case. It was done
That
by
was very different to the arguments that were being
Nugent.
proposed before the
Mrs.
passing of the legislation.
Mrs. Who's
In
the Evelyn
2000,
of politics believed our
sorry, oh, I'm frozen over
Mr.
here. Can I
Mboli
just confirm,
that
Chair,
he
are you
was
still
never
hearing
ever
me?
involved.
Yes, we are.
Although
Thank you.
even the SCA agreed that
So in
apparently he was correctly
2018, we
convicted.
conducted another nationally
But
representative
I'm just
survey
thinking,
of about
if for
740
instance, like an
restaurants.
AK-47,
And basically what we found is
storm a
that
bank
most of these
together. Yeah,
restaurants
even
who
then
had
you could
at
argue
some
that I
expense
didn't know that
in
Baloyi is
the
going to come
early
up with an
2000s
AK-47.
created these
You could still get away with it. Fine.
smoking only cubicles in their
But it's a question where you have
many
held,
of them had gotten rid
allegedly
of them
held
because they simply were not
a
profitable.
prior
The
agreement.
number of people that were entering them
meeting.
were much less than the number of people
And you
that were
get
visiting
armed,
the
all of you.
non-smoking part of the
And you
restaurants.
all get into a bank
Most,
armed, or
well,
some of
nearly
you not
50%
armed.
had already
Maybe
banned
they just
smoking in their restaurants entirely. Some of them had moved the smoking area outdoors, and only 11% had allowed indoor smoking. This was in
the one that
2018,
we cite
and
there,
chances are
confirmed by
that
the
that
Constitutional
percentage has
Court
even
that
decreased subsequently.
the tenter
So
must have the
many
intention
of
to
these
hold it on
establishments
behalf
had
of
actually
the group,
changed their
and
smoking
the group should
policies
have the intention
in the
to
past decade,
exercise
nearly
possession through
exclusively
the
to move away
detent.
from smoking into non-smoking. I want to very briefly talk about the health promotion levy. I know that this is not about the sugar tax, but I want to just give you an idea of the type of arguments that get made before the time, and then how do they compare with what has actually transpired
it is
after
submitted
the
that
fact.
the
So
application
you
for
may recall,
discharge
Chair,
ought
that
to be
in
dismissed.
April 2018,
there's a
the
signature
government
underneath,
implemented the health promotion levy. This was essentially a tax on sugar and sugar sweetened beverages. It was discussed at length before the time. The industry response was very, very strong, very, very aggressive, to the extent that they were claiming that between 60 and 70,000 jobs would be lost. This was a study that was conducted by Oxford Economics, and that this is going to just be like a catastrophe for different people. The media amplified these fears. If we have a look at what actually happened subsequently, research that has been conducted by Priceless indicates that over an extended period of time, when the HPL was implemented, there was actually
there
no
were additional
impact
submissions
on
that we made regarding the evidence of
unemployment
Mr.
in this
Thabo
particular
Makaleni.
industry. Of course, COVID came, and COVID had a massive impact on employment, and over time, of course, there was a reversal of that, and at the moment
And
we
we
are finding
indicated,
that
my lord, that there
employment
were some
within this
words
particular
in
sector is
those
much
submissions,
less. Why am I
typing
telling you
errors,
this?
and
Sorry,
we
my
undertook to just neaten
screen
that
is
up.
battling.
We have since done that, my lord. Yesterday, I gave my colleagues
Why am I telling you this is that when an industry feels threatened
version
by
that
an
has been,
intervention, it has a strong
cleaned
incentive to
up.
exaggerate the economic consequences
It's
of those
just basically the
interventions.
same. The only
Often,
difference,
the
my lord, is
argument goes
reference
along the
to
lines
the
of, we support
record
this, we think it's
which
great for
just
public health,
mentioned.
but, and then it's
So we'll
always
just
on
allow,
economics where this thing then
Mr.
is
Mzanga just
fought
to
very, very strongly.
to interpret the
If one has a look
initial
at the industry studies done
submissions,
by
and
places like
thereafter
Oxford
we'll
Economics,
then
they tend to focus
just
on the partial perspective.
in
What's
less
going to
than
be
a
the
minute, my
impact
lord, just
of
refer
my
to
particular intervention,
the
and
updated
they
version.
ignore the whole picture. So what you want, Chair, is independent research, much more than what you want research that is done or financed by the industry. So you know very well the 5 main aspects of the bill. I'm not going to talk through them. We submitted in August of 2023 a lengthy document that summarized all the academic research at that point in time on these different aspects. And I'm not going to talk too much about them, but basically the evidence internationally, and also the limited amount of evidence that we have in South Africa where this has been implemented is that, that they are effective in reducing tobacco use, that these interventions are effective in reducing exposure of youth to smoking, that they are typically appreciated by the public, and that the economic consequences are much less than what the industry would like to make us believe at the outset.
Can therefore not
So we've
be
spoken about
constructed as
illicit
deliberately
trade. In the last few
deviating
minutes, I
from
want
the
to just
approach
briefly talk about
followed in
employment
the
effects
Ndlovu
and
case.
general economic effects.
And
If
I
one
quote,
believes what
the writer refers
the
to the
tobacco
Lubanzi
industry's
2010 Volume 2
studies
SACR
suggest, one
233
thinks that
SCA
the
case, not
cornerstone
allowing
of
the
this
hearsay
South
admissions
African
cannot
economy is
necessarily
tobacco.
be
And they make these kind of
construed
statements where they
as
say we made
criticism
so many
of the
billion
approach
rands
of
worth
the
of
Ndlovu
gross value
case.
added to South Africa's GDP.
It was
They
never the
compare it to the
purpose of
agricultural
Section
sector. They
3,
say it's a
Subsection
huge
1,
amount.
Paragraph C,
Chair, many
to allow
of these
all
numbers
hearsay
are
evidence, but to
inflated
grant
in a way
a
that
court
is
the discretion
to
to
a
allow
large
it.
extent meant
The
to
court
be
in this
misleading and even
instance found
to
conscious
deceive.
reason not to allow the
So
evidence,
the
of
tobacco
which
industry
the
supports
failure
a
by the
total of
trial court to
160,000 and some
provide
more
no
jobs in
reason at all
2019.
must have played
Our
a major
response
role.
is that if
Lapho
one
ke
has a
futhi
look
wakhuluma
at
khona-ke
this
ngodaba kwelinye ke icala lapho-ke
economic
lapho
report,
caphuni kwicala
we've looked at
lakaNdlovu-ke
this
lapho
economic report,
futhi
and
nelinye
the
ke
way
icala
that
likaLibanzila
the
ngo-2010
authors of this report
noma
go
elahla
about it
ngaphansi
is they
ngomnyaka
look at the
ka-2010
direct
isikhwama sakhona
contribution.
esaqhamuka
They
ngomnyaka
also talk
ka-2010 ke
about the
lapho-ke
indirect
bakhuluma
contribution
ngodaba
and the so-called
kwenkulumo
induced
ekungizwa
contribution,
kuphela-ke
so-called
ewela ngaphansi kwesigaba
multiplier effect.
sezomthetho ka-3 lapho-ke futhi
If one does
ngaphansi
that and
paragraph 1
you come up
paragraph
with
C
large
wakhona-ke
numbers, and that's
ukuthi
the whole
inkulumo
idea of
ekungizwa
these
khona
types
ukuthi
of
inkosi
studies,
enkantolo
to come up
noma
with
ke
large
inkantolo
dramatic
ibuke
numbers,
kanjani
so
uma
many
ngabe
thousands of people are going to lose their jobs, so many billions of rands is going to be lost to the GDP. That is essentially misleading. If one follows this approach
Paragraph
of
30,
Oxford
it is
Economics for
submitted that
each
this
and
is
every
an
sector in the
appropriate
economy,
case and
South
in the
Africa's
interest of
GDP would be
justice
closer
to
to that
revoke
of a
Section
typical
3,
European country
subsection 1,
in terms
paragraph
of per
C
capita
of the
terms
Hearsay
than what
Act,
it is at the
as
moment.
there are many
It
enough
greatly
safeguards
exaggerates
as
the
there is sufficient
economic
corroboration
contribution
for
of
the
these
extra crucial
particular
statements of accused number
industries.
2. As mentioned
So
above,
when
the
one looks
firearm
at
found in accused number
the
3's
number of jobs
possession
that are
being
being so-called
ballistically linked
supported
to
by
the
the
bullet
tobacco industry,
projectile
they
found on
include
the
a
scene,
huge number
and
of
the fact
retail
that
jobs
downloads
where
showed
the
that
impression is
accused
created
number
as
5
that
communicated
these
with
people that are selling
Kelly
tobacco
Kumar.
into retail
Nalapho-ke futhi bathi
settings,
bacela-ke
it's
futhi
the only thing that they are
baphethula le
selling.
nkulumo yabo
The fact
futhi
of the matter
ngokuyixoba
is
futhi
that when
ngokugcwele
people do not
ngesicelo
purchase
esikhulu-ke
cigarettes,
lapho-ke
the money doesn't
ukuthi
disappear.
kungaphansi
It's going to be
kozobulungiswa
spent on other
bezomthetho-ke
goods and
ukuthi
services.
lapho-ke
So people
isigaba
are not going
sika-section
to be
3 noma
buying
u-section 3-ke
cigarettes
lapho-ke
or
isigaba sesithathu
e-cigarettes or
sezomthetho-ke
whatever. They
senkulumo
will be spending
kangizwa
their
ukuthi
money
komele
on
ukuthi
clothing,
sisebenze-ke
on
lapho-ke
food, on
ngoba bathi khona-ke ubufakazi obuhambisanayo kakhulu
drink, etc. So
kakhulukazi-ke mayelana nodaba
it's
ley'tatimende
not a case
zakamsola
that the money
wesibili-ke
simply
lezi
disappears.
ezengeziwe
Also,
lezi kade
jobs are
ayikhuluma
fungible.
khona-ke umsola wesibili-ke
People working in the
futhi ngokuthi
agricultural and
isibhamu
the retail
sakamsola
sectors, they
wesithathu-ke
can
noma mhlawumbe
easily
lokuyona
move
iprojekthi
from
abayithola-ke
selling
lapho-ke
producing one
yaxhumana
thing
nale kade
to
ikhona-ke
producing
ngaphakathi kwaloya
another thing.
muzi
So
wesigameko-ke
the tobacco
umuzwa lapho
industry's
kwakhumalo futhi
argument
bathi
that these
ukuthi
jobs are
ngesikhathi kade
dependent
bethubula
on the tobacco
inkulumo
industry and
kade
that
khona
tobacco
ngaphakathi
industry is
emakhalekhukhwini noma
creating
ocingweni
all these
labasolwakhe
jobs and
bathi
that these
khona
jobs will
ngakamsola
disappear
wesithathu
completely
wesihlanu-ke
is
lapho-ke
completely
bathi kuyatshengakala
self-serving
khona
and, in
ukuthi
our
yena-ke
opinion,
bekaxhumana
I
noKelly
don't want
Khumalo
to spend
ocingweni.
time on this
Mr. Thabo
particular
Makeleni.
issue,
Mr. Thabo
but
Makeleni
what I
made a
do want to
statement
say
on the
is that
27th of
when
October
the
2014,
tobacco
a
industry
day
is
after
making
the
these kinds of
incident.
claims,
The
they
main
are
thrust
using
of this statement /evidence
economic
is
consultancy
captured in
groups
Exhibit
that
J,
get paid
page
to
5.
come up with a
First
particular
paragraph.
report that gives them the so-called
The
near worst
effect
case
of the
scenario.
evidence
This
is that
literally
he
taken
saw
from the Oxford
3
Economics
unknown
report.
African
And
males
basically what
in
they're
the
trying to do
vicinity
is
of
to
the
give
gas
this
station.
alarmist, nearly
Open bracket, visible
dramatic
on the
idea of what is
mshasho
happening in
photos,
terms of the
comma,
economy.
busy on the cell phone. He saw
Oxford
them
Economics was
again
the
at Kelly's
consultancy
mom's
that
house.
gave
Suspect
the
B
very, very
stood
exaggerated
at the
employment
gate.
impacts related to the
He
health
gave the
promotion
following
levy.
description.
They are now also being
African
used
male,
again by
more or
SACA
less
to
25 years.
create this impression that
Height
the
1.8 taller,
law is going to
slender
have this
build.
immensely
Lapho khona
negative
kwathi
economic
inkulumo
impact.
eyakhulunywa ke
We
leko
just
uThabo Makeleni
don't
bathi
believe
statement
that.
sakhe ke
Also, if
wasikhuluma
one
ngelanga
reads their reports,
lenge-27
it's
zaka-October
very,
ngonyaka
very
ka-2014
difficult to understand
ngemuva kwelanga
exactly what's going on.
lesigameko-ke
Their methods are
bathi
okay.
lapho-ke kwistatement
Their
sakhe noma
data
ubufakazi
sources
bakhe
are
bathi
all industry related.
kucashuniwe
It is very,
kubhaliwe
very
ngaphansi
difficult for any
kubukiso ka-J
objective
noma
and
ke-exhibit J
independent person to
ngesingisi-ke
see what is
kwikhasi lesihlanu
happening
lapho-ke
there.
bathi kuparagraph lokuqala la yena kakhulumile khona ukuthi wabona-ke abalisa
Sorry, Chair, my computer
abathathu-ke
is
balana iningizimu
not
Afrika
playing
noma
with
mhlawumbe
me.
abalisa abamnyama-ke
I'll just get
lapho-ke
to my
bathi
last
kuleya ndawo
slide.
yalaphayana kula gas station ngesingisi uma beyibiza-ke
So,
lapho-ke
in
bathi lokho
conclusion,
kukhona ngaphakathi
should
kwey'thombe
we protect our children?
zakamhlahlo
Should we protect public health?
futhi
Or should we
nalapho
pander to
athe
an
wabona
industry that sells products
bematasatasa
that kill people?
ocingweni noma
That's essentially
komakhalekhukhwini
what is
babo-ke
happening
lapho-ke
here.
wabe
The
futhi
tobacco
wabona-ke
industry in
lapho-ke
South Africa is
ngaphansi
harmful to
komuzi noma
society.
kulo muzi
The tobacco
okwakhumalo
industry
lapho-ke
is a liability. It is
futhi
not
wathi
an
umsola
asset. If we do
wesibili
a
noma
comparison
ususpect B-ke
between
noma umsola
the
wesibili-ke
benefits
loyo-ke
and the
kadamile lapho-ke
disadvantages of
nangesangweni
tobacco,
langaphandle
we don't
egate
have to think
ngengesiNgisi
too hard about
bathi
it.
bese
The
abanye
evidence is
lapho-ke
clear
qhubeka washo khona
internationally
njalo
and in South
ngesikhangiso
Africa
sabo
that the
kade
harms and
betshengakala
the
ngaso ukuthi
economic
kade kuwabantu
harms
abatshengakala
greatly
kanjani
exceed
ngokwesikhangiso
the
sabo
economic
bathi
benefits
wabona-ke abantu
of this
abamnyama-ke mhlawumbe insizwa
industry.
ezimnyama-ke lapho-ke
Also, Chair,
bathi
South
omunye
Africa has an
wakhona-ke
obligation under the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control to implement strong tobacco control policy. Our strong recommendation to you is let's put the strongest possible policies in place to pass the bill. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. And thanks to their team. I hope you do recognize that no matter how radical we can be, we still have to live with tobacco industry in the country. It's probably not likely to wish them away, but we actually thank you for your contribution. May I therefore recognize honorable members who want to engage, but Prof, you must take a pen and paper because then you'll take all questions one time, and then we'll then answer them after we have finished listening to all members. Let me recognize members who would like to then
put up their hand.
Felicia His or facial hair, my apologies, my lord.
We'll start with Honorable
Facial hair
Chirwa
inwele zakhe,
Mpungose.
but
Chirwa
mustache
Mpungose.
and beard, but
Honorable
inwele
Clark,
zakhe
number
futhi
2.
nemustache futhi ngisho nenchebe
Honorable
yakhona ke lapho ke.
Dr.
Witness saw
Leroux, number
something
3.
in his hand that could have
Welcome,
been a
Honorable Van
firearm.
Staden, you are
But
number
ufakazi
4.
khona ke into wayibona
Honorable
ke kuyena ke
Shabangu,
lo muntu
number
esandleni
5.
bekangathi mhlambi ke yisibhamu
Honorable
lesi awasibona.
Leklape,
Roman
number
figure under
6.
Roman figure 2. The
Welcome,
defense
Honorable
themselves
Sine,
introduced this
you are number
exhibit into
7.
the record.
Honorable
We submit,
Motubate, you
therefore,
are
that
number
they
8.
concerted to the hearsay evidence of Mr. Makeleni.
Any member that I'm leaving out?
As
We are
advised
leaving
in
out
section 3,
go out to number
subsection 1,
9.
paragraph A of the Law
Please, Chair.
of Evidence Amendment Act 45 of 1988, which provides that subject to any other law, hearsay evidence shall not be admitted as evidence in a criminal proceedings.
Chairperson, we've lost you there. We can't hear you.
Ke ibona ke baqhamukise le nkulumo lena ke ngaphakathi kwemibukiso lapho ke inkulumo kaMnumzana koMakeleni futhi bona beqhamisela ngaphansi noma ngaphambi kwenkosi yenkantolo ke ngesikhathi kade behola ke noma kade bephenya ke noma kade bebuza ke imibuzo ke lana ke bathi futhi ukwamela ukuthi bakufake ngaphansi kwesigaba noma inkosi yenkantolo ke kwamela ukuthi kwamukele ngaphansi kwesigaba sesithathu sezomthetho ke lapho seyinkulumo kungizwa nje kuphela ngaphansi kwezomthetho ke lapho ke umthetho sisekelo ka 45
to the presenter for their presentation. I just have one question. I mean, your presentation is very concise and distinct on issues you've been engaging over and over again in this portfolio committee. There's just one point, that I think we're not getting into enough, and I mean, it might be because we're being modest or we don't want to be fear-mongering human beings, and I think it's an important aspect following the Syndrome Kwanaze allegations and all that's happening in relation to the SAPS and illicit trade, in particular in relation to this bill and these engagements. I want to ask, Prof, if maybe we are underestimating the collaborative efforts between law enforcement and the illicit trade industry. And I'm saying this on the backdrop of, for instance, there's been a lot of conversations and exposures as well, especially in the township area, in relation to drug use, right? That people report drugs are being sold at this particular point, and sometimes we see the police there, but these drug dealers never get arrested. And it speaks to the deep rot really in our country, and I think we should be also having these conversations in relation to illicit trade, especially because there is so much data. There is so much data that is being collected from an industry that always presents itself as if it's some far-fetched, vague idea when there's actual factories and even known retailers and big businesses that are in the mainstream and non-illicit trade industry are also found to be dabbling in illicit trade, right? Are we really underestimating the collaboration between law enforcement and the illicit trade industry? That's my only question
the issue
to you,
pertaining
Prof.
to the admissibility of Mr. Makeleni's statement. Lapho ke kade bebukisa futhi ngamanye ke amacala ke walapho ke ngaphambi kwenkosi ephakeme lapho ke eKapa ke Kapa lodumo ke laba khona khona ke ngelinye icala bacapha icala la kaDasi ke icala kalombuso futhi nicala la kaBomkazi Dasi la bathi khona ke uBomkazi Dasi ke yena ke wabhala istatement sakhe ke phake statement
before you answer, who is number 2?
kepha washona ngaphambi kokufika athula ufakazi bakhe
Sorry,
phecelezi
honorable
statement sakhe
members.
ke lapho ke
Prof, you don't have
You
to
will
take
write down the
the
questions,
High
then
Court
you'll
had
answer
ruled
at
that
the end of the
the
questions.
statement of the
You
witnesses
have to
who
write
had
down and
since
prepare your
passed on
answers.
Thank you for
was
that.
admissible under Section 3, Subsection 1,
Thank you for
Paragraph
that,
C, Act 45 of
but Prof, that's what I have asked,
1988.
that the Prof
Nalapho
must get a
futhi
pen
kade
and
besho khona
paper
ukuthi inkosi
and
yenkantolo
listen to all
ephakeme
members and then
lapho ke
answer
elokuzane Kapa
after all
lodumo ke
members have asked
yasithatha ke
questions.
statement
Thank you very
esibese
much.
futhi yasamukela ngaphansi kwenkulumo
Okay,
ewela
thank you
ngaphansi
very
kwesigaba
much, Prof, for your
sesithathu sezomthetho
presentation.
ke
I mean,
Figure
you
5.
spoke a lot about the
The
illegal,
CC
the
examined the
illicit
provisions of
trade,
Section
and
3,
obviously,
subsection 4 of the Hearsay
that's one
Act
of our very big
defines
concerns in
hearsay
terms
as
of this
evidence,
bill.
whether
My
oral
question to
or
you
in
is: do you
writing,
think that this
the
bill, in
probative
its current
value of
form,
which depends
would
upon
be
a credibility
a
of
successful
any
deterrent,
person other
considering
than
that
the
the
person giving such
illicit trade
evidence?
in this country is hovering around 65%? And how would you suggest that we strengthen legislation in order to curb this? Because we have spoken about this issue at length at the committee, and that SARS and that SAPS need to come to our committee and give us a presentation how they're going to deal with it, because it's a huge concern. Then, do you fully support all aspects of the bill, or is there anything you would like to change? And then, do you view vaping as a viable way to stop smoking and eventually stop vaping or use of other nicotine products? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Prof. van Walbeck, for your presentation. I just wanted to get some clarity on a few points that you made, which I've interpreted slightly differently, some of the tables that you showed me. And so I think the one is the table that you showed in terms of the excise duties over time and and how well and the illegal trade over time, where it was very low till about 2008, 2010, and then it went up. And so there was quite a significant increase straight after 2010 from about 5 to 20%, and then it went from when after Tomoyana came into power, it went from about 20 to 35%. And for me, the real increase was very soon after the latest take back, like it went from 5 to 20%. That's a proportionally a very high increase compared to a doubling in that time. And I think that for me, the concern is, and I think I don't agree that the excise taxes didn't have an impact. I think there seems to be a point where there was a straw that broke the camel's back, and I think that and so I hear you that as the enforcement became poorer, it got bigger. But it seems to have been pushed as well, and I think that one has to recognize that there's been some impact because there's 25 rands per pack of cigarettes in tax, and I think that I don't think it does your argument any good if you say that there's no impact. So I just like your comment on that. I do think that there clearly is an impact of stricter legislation and excise tax, and it seems like there was a push factor, and then the wall broke because of the fact that there was no proper legislation. So I think that's the first comment, and I'd like to see your perspectives on that. I also find it interesting to say that we don't have there's not a legislative aspect to the illegal trade, because I think that we could put things in place in this bill, for example, to ask for track and trace, or to bring in stricter penalties for illegal trade, etc., etc. So I think that I do feel like there is a legislative aspect, and I'd like to hear your perspective. What legislation could we put in to put pressure on the illegal trade? The third thing is I'd just like to understand. I mean, I think that it's extraordinary to see the table that you made with each of the different brands and what percentage you think is illegal. And for me, it is astonishing that we haven't acted against those brands, and why has nothing happened? And for me, that is a critical aspect of what we need to do, because if we do make the illegal trade, if we don't do something with illegal trade, we are going to push more people into the legal trade. And then finally, uh, in terms of the job losses, I know that you said there haven't been significant ones, and I think again, we've sat through many hours of hearings from people, from informal traders, from legal companies in South Africa and there is a community organization that mentioned how many jobs were lost at a factory in Gauteng somewhere. So there does seem to have been an impact, and again, I think that I'd like to hear a comment on that, because it does. I mean, I agree that that we don't have to shouldn't be buying everything that the tobacco industry is saying to us, but there is always a kernel of truth where these things come from, and I feel like we have to have a balance around those things and not just say that everything they're saying is wrong. So we are trying to see the minimize the impact of this bill and the unintended consequences. And so I'd appreciate your perspectives on those comments.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the welcoming note. Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues, and to the presenter, good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation. Just two questions from my side, and I want to hear your view on the following. I agree, the illicit trade is criminal. We all knew that. But my problem is what I try to understand, and I want to hear your view on this, is that we all know that law enforcement under our current legislation is a bit problematic. So I try to understand what will be different different if this bill will be signed into law and placed onto the statute book. I mean, will we not be stuck with the same problem that we currently have? And then my second question on that regarding the offences and penalties under clause 16 of this bill, do you think that we have the necessary manpower to enforce this legislation if we're talking about what do you call it, law enforcement? That's all for me. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you for this presentation from Prof. And the information that we got, and also the indication that the illicit production of this product, it's about 78% produced in South Africa, because there is a notion that these illicit products, they come from outside 100%. So at least we will all understand that that high percentage that is produced in South Africa. In your presentation, Prof, you said the independent researcher is more credible. May you please, in your own understanding, clarify us on what constitutes an independent research? Why I'm asking that is because from the previous presenters, we realized that this tobacco industry, they play a role of a driver and a conductor. They conduct and publish the papers for its own product. They have consultants that are researchers. So I just want you to clarify us on your understanding of what constitutes an independent research. And also the caption that says, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Can you also please unpack this statement? Because for me, I really don't get it. But maybe once you unpack it, it will make sense. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for welcoming me. The presenter, I'm happy he spoke about illicit trade. In previous submissions, we have also heard that a large majority, about 80% of illicit trade comes from the legal tobacco companies manufacturing locally. How does this occur in practice, and why then does the tobacco industry complain about illicit trade as though it were caused by regulation, when in fact they are a central driver of it? And is the industry not using this very problem they create as a basis to rally opposition to this bill? If so, how will you advise this committee to act to ensure an evidence-based and balanced approach to regulation? Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair, I hope it's my turn now. I just have a few questions. My first one relates to the issue of independence. You clearly articulated the fact that you are independent, but you are aligned to the WHO, and that others are in the tobacco industry. What we're listening here are differences of opinion from industry and from the WHO. And there have been people that have presented there that are supposedly funded by the tobacco industry, allegedly. If you are on the WHO side, would you consider yourself independent? Because what I was hoping for was people that are truly independent of both sides that can give us an opinion based on science about what is being said by the two camps. So that is my first question in terms of, if you are on the WHO side and funded from structures that fund the WHO, do you consider yourself independent in this discussion to be able to advise Parliament to make the right decision? The second question is the impact on the Empower strategy of cheap cigarettes. Because whoever is fueling it, wherever it's coming from, illicit cigarettes are a source of cheap cigarettes that do not pay duty. And as such, because they are cheap and accessible, they defy one of the key strategies of the FCTC in terms of decreasing availability and making things expensive as part of the Empower. So it really doesn't matter to me. But my question to you is that if they are cheap cigarettes, however stringent our bill is, if you can't cap the availability of cheap cigarettes, it's all going to fail, just like the previous strategies have failed. And you know, for me, I would like you to help me with that aspect. And lastly, related to that, just make me understand, if a lot of what we see here as illicit comes from the tobacco industry itself, why are they shouting about curbing illicit? Because they'll be curbing the monies that they make if they are the producers of illicit. Or could it be that they're saying that because they know that we have no ability to uphold the rule of law in this country? Thank you, Chair.
No, thanks very much, Chair, and also welcoming the presentation. You say that earlier on, you say that there are no figures of illicit trade, but later you have a list of companies that are the culprits. Can you clarify me around that particular aspect? Would I infer from what you have presented around this particular issue, also with what Dr. Letlapev said in respect of your declaration, which is a bit contradictory to me, because you mentioned that you are funded by the Bill Gates. My inference would be, from what you have said, that you are pushing a particular narrative to suit a particular class of people who want to influence policy in our country, who are clearly known to have done that throughout. Would you actually clarify me around that particular issue? And my view at some point would be the drum that has been hit, that there are certain individuals or business people or traders who are legitimate. What test, in practical terms, would you suggest or have been conducted on a daily basis to clarify us that everything that they have and everything that they are pushing have passed the test? Do we have data to that aspect, or what is it that you'd suggest in terms of tracking those? And also, Prof, if the 43 billion cost on the economy is directly impacts or includes induced impacts, which you have just said, just clarify me now, which you are now against. Please clarify me around that particular aspect. Thank you very much.
Okay, Prof, on my side, just one. There was a big mention from your side on the illicit trade.
Before you, Chair.
Yeah,
Before you, Chair, I was the last.
Okay.
Yes, Chair. Let me come before you so that we are able to close it. Good evening, Professor. I welcome your presentation and your suggestions in front of this portfolio committee. The advices that you have put forward, the suggestions, and also the clarity around the issue of who does what around illicit cigarette trading. You have put it correctly, and we have cleared the mist that was there, because we were made to believe that we must agree that we put the interest of the industry at the cost of people's well-being. Thank you for that clarity. We are now aware that some inside the country are contributors to this issue of illicit trading. You have joined others in advising government to do the track and tracing around who does what in which corner. Also, I think we now aware that we can't put the fight against illicit trading as a prerequisite. We must process the bill, pass the bill, so that the people's well-being is addressed. The lost revenue will be recovered if one does his own responsibility, including the track and tracing. You have responded to the issue of that was argued that this issue of illicit trading was more during the period of COVID-19, because there were restrictions then. You have clarified that. You have also clarified the issue that South Africa can pass this bill and also deal separately with the issue of illicit trading. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you also for the support to the bill. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Yeah. On the question of cessation, you would recommend people cease and quit, but I did not hear strongly what would be your view for those, especially adults, who may wish to quit but are struggling to do so. If you could then provide, I'm really happy with what you have provided on illicit. I would have really gone that way too in terms of that submission that you made, and which actually says maybe while we cannot exonerate health, but they should also play a role with many other stakeholders. That to me is very helpful. Can you then provide us responses on these questions asked, and we will stop at about 5 past. That will be more than enough. 5 past 6, they will then should have stopped your responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, honourable members, for your questions. I just want to pull up my presentation again and try and address some of the issues that have been raised by the various committee members. Sadly, I don't have enough time to do that for all of the questions that have been raised, but I want to just, from our experience, talk a little bit about some of the issues that have been raised over here. So I think it's important, and by the way, I can't see my colleagues, but if any of them would like to add in anything, Chair, can I ask that you recognize their hands and then just stop me? I can't see those hands at the moment, but hopefully my colleagues can add something to this. So, Chair, I think it's very important to realize that the tobacco industry in South Africa is not homogeneous. It consists essentially of two groups. You have listened to JTI, to British American Tobacco, and to Philip Morris. I am not aware that the smaller companies that are sitting under the banner of the Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association, or FITA, whether any of them have made any presentations. As far as I can see, none of them have engaged with you on this particular matter. And that in itself is quite interesting. Why would those companies that have got so much to potentially lose from this or gain from this, why don't they engage with the process? I don't know. But what I do want to emphasize, and I would like to just address the question of why did there suddenly in 2010, why was there this sudden increase in illicit trade? And my argument would be that this was to a large extent the result of the pricing strategy of the incumbent at that point in time, which was British American Tobacco. British American Tobacco had a 95% market share at the turn of the century. What they have been doing up to that point, if we have a look here at the retail price of cigarettes, we are seeing that the retail price of cigarettes can be broken down into three components. The sales tax, which is the GST before 1990, the VAT since 1990, the excise tax, which is indicated in red, and the blue bars indicate over here what has happened to the net of tax price since literally the 1960s. And what we notice is that the net of tax price, which is essentially the price that goes to the producers and so on, had been increasing after being decreasing for a period of 30 years, has been increasing in real or inflation-adjusted terms from the early 1990s onwards till about 2009. This was British American's tobacco pricing strategy. They were increasing the net of tax price. They were caning it in terms of the amount of profit that they were making per cigarette that they sold. Yes, there was a decrease in the number of cigarettes because of the increase in the excise tax. But what we also notice over here is that while the excise tax was increasing, they were increasing the net of tax. And to some extent, they were causing the increases in the excise tax over this period. Then what happened in about 2010, you find that a lot of small companies are entering into the market for very good economic reasons. And those economic reasons were that it was incredibly profitable. British American Tobacco was making huge amounts of money per cigarette that they were selling, and that was attracting the smaller companies, many of whom were selling then cigarettes at prices that were too low and that were essentially not paying taxes. So in the case of South Africa, British American Tobacco is crying big crocodile tears on the illicit trade is so bad. But if one looks at this blue bars or these blue bars over here, one can see that they were using their near monopoly power during this period to try and increase the excise tax. They were making more money. Admittedly, this was good for public health, but it was not aimed at public health. It was aimed at increasing the profit per unit. What I also just want to briefly talk about is this table that has been mentioned a little bit. What you notice over here is that there are some cigarettes that are less likely to be illicit. And on the other hand, there are some cigarettes, mainly from the local producers, the non-multinationals, where this is very, very problematic and where the prices are nearly 80 or 90% of the cigarettes sold under that brand are sold at prices that are so low that it cannot be that the full tax has been paid. This information is shocking. And what this essentially means is we should look at illicit trade not from a legislative perspective, but from an enforcement perspective. The problem in South Africa regarding this is a lack of enforcement. In 2019, the South African Revenue Service has put out a call for a track and trace system. For reasons that are not clear, in August of 2020, that call for tenders to have a track and trace system which allows an independent party to look into the illicit trade situation, to allow them to track what has been produced and be able to trace back if a particular product is in the market, trace back where did this product come from. That was the essence of a track and trace system. That tender was withdrawn in 2020, and SARS at that point in time suggested that the problem is not going to be solved by imposing a track and trace system, which is an odd position to take because there's so many countries around the world, both high-income countries and middle-income countries, countries like Kenya, like Brazil, like Turkey, that have implemented track and trace systems and have been able to substantially decrease the illicit trade. Most recently, SARS has been trying to implement closed circuit television cameras in the manufacturing hubs as well as the distribution hubs of all cigarette companies. BAT is trying to present itself as being the honorable and the team player, and they are in support of that. But FITA has then implemented legal action against the government, specifically against SARS, where this would be perceived as an infringement of privacy, and CCTV cameras are not allowed in those warehouses and in those factories of the tobacco companies. Clearly, these companies have something to hide. And we can see it in the statistics in terms of what is the amount of illicit trade for different things. A number of different issues have been raised by that. But I think the important thing to realize is that there is illicit trade in South Africa. One of the honorable members indicated that on the one hand, we don't know what the smuggling is. On the other hand, we do know what the smuggling is. At this point in time, we've got a fairly good handle on what is the size of the illicit market. Illicit market consists of two things. The one thing is undeclared local production. The other one is smuggling. We do not know at this point in time what that relationship is or what the proportions are of exactly what percentage of total illicit trade is being smuggled into the country versus what percentage of illicit trade is domestically produced and is simply not declared to the South African Revenue Services. So we do know how much the total illicit trade is, but I'll be the first one to admit that I cannot give you a precise number in terms of how much is smuggled and how much is illegally produced within South Africa. So the first honorable member made the comment, are we underestimating collaboration between the enforcement authorities and the tobacco producers? I would argue there is a lot of corruption and deep rot that is happening, but it's not for me to say exactly where that rot is because I am not an investigative journalist. The evidence that we have looked at suggests that there is a very, very specific problem with illicit trade in South Africa. We can point to a large extent which are the relevant manufacturers within South Africa that are producing these very cheap and therefore probably illicit cigarettes, and that they need to be investigated more. Unfortunately, I am not sort of understanding the SARS situation well enough that allows me to say what is being done from the authority side in order to oppose it. So the second honorable member asked, do I support the bill? The answer is I absolutely support the bill. The fact of the matter is that the bill is trying to create a better life for all South Africans. And the question then is illicit trade going to have an impact on the bill, or will the bill have an impact on illicit trade? I don't think that's the relevant question. Illicit trade is a criminal problem. It needs to be sorted out not through legislation. It needs to be sorted out by the existing legislation that is there that empowers the Revenue Authority empowers the police services to go after the illicit traders and to make sure that those illicit cigarettes are taken off the market and that the people involved get prosecuted. So I am very, very, I feel strongly that to include issues on illicit trade into the bill is not necessarily the appropriate place. At the end of the day, this illicit or this bill is being looked at through the Ministry of Health eyes. The Ministry of Health is not an enforcer. So to try and conflate these issues, I don't think makes any sense. So a question that was asked by, I think, Honourable Member Leroux about the job losses and also why have you not acted against illicit trade? I don't know why we have not acted against illicit trade. That is a question that I really would like to ask the South African Revenue Services. Why is it so difficult? The other question is the job losses. So in Heidelberg, there is the BAT factory. BAT in South Africa employs just shy of 1,000 people. Will there be a reduction in employment in the tobacco industry if there is going to be very significant and effective tobacco control legislation? The answer is yes, but that's looking at it from a very partial perspective. There have already been significant reductions in the number of people that are employed in the tobacco industry for very understandable economic reasons. There's been an increase in mechanization in these in these factories. So people are being replaced by machines, and then it's a natural occurrence that some people are going to lose their jobs. An engineer who works in a tobacco factory can quite easily transfer their skills into another place where engineers are required. So it's not a case that if one loses one job in a particular industry, that lost job is going to be lost from a macro type of perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We had allocated to up to just 6:05. That's
Chair,
what
thank you very much for allowing me. Thank you.
Yeah, if there are any other outstanding responses that you need to supply us with, please do not hesitate to forward them to Ms. Machalamba. We'll appreciate that very much. Thanks. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We now have another presentation from young people, the youth leader, who will introduce his team. He has been struggling over the past week. There were challenges that faced him then he's able to join us today. We give you a space, Mr. Nkosi Khona, for right from now until about 25 to 7, which will be then your 30 minutes to present. Thereafter, we'll have a pen and paper, and members will interact with you, give us your responses. After that, all questions will come at one time. Then we'll give you another 12 minutes thereafter to respond to those questions. So your 30 minutes starts now. We cannot hear you. We can see your presentation. Start.
No, thank you so much, Chairperson. Greetings to everyone. My name is Nkosi Khona Mpungose, known as Uzi, the director of an organization called Youth Interactive, based in Durban in eThekwini. Chairperson, I'm trying to go to the next slide. I'm not sure what's happening. Oh, yes. Honorable Chairperson and members of the Parliament and the stakeholders, thank you so much for the opportunity to make our input on the tobacco bill of 2022. Youth Interactive exists to share information to empower young people to become responsible and active citizens, especially in KZN and obviously in South Africa in general. Target audience of adolescents and young people, especially those that are in school and also out of school. Our programs have different focus depending on the age group. And we take pride in encouraging and empowering young people to unlock their fullest potential while driving a positive change in their own communities. The most work that we do include educating and sharing HIV research information, as well as also the SRHR and also preventing methodologies. We also do civic education, which references to the Constitution, especially on Bill of Rights, making sure that young people actually understand their rights and with their responsibilities as active citizens of this country, and also educating young people on the SDGs and also how to monitor them in their own respective corners, the Sustainable Development Goals. We collaborate a lot with civil society organizations, which aligns with our vision and mission, empowering young people and also safeguarding their future. One such organization is the South African Tobacco Free Youth Forum, which is SATFI, where I also serve as the KZN chapter chairperson. As an organization, our mission is to build a healthier, active, and drug-free generation of young people who can realize their full potential, once again, without being burdened by the harmful effects of tobacco and related substance. South Africa is at a crossroad when it comes to protecting its youth. Tobacco and nicotine products includes e-cigarettes are being marketed aggressively to young people, particularly through social media and friendly platforms. The harmfulness, this normalizes the harmfulness habit at an early age and increases the risk of a long-term addictive to young people. On the other hand, South Africa's current tobacco control laws, while strong on its own right, it does not sufficiently protect young people from these emerging products. So youth interactives community engagement across KZN has shown some revealing behavior change and challenges, which we will be sharing with the members. Starting with the number one, which is peer pressure and social norms. Many young people as young as from the adolescent stage experiment with smoking or vaping because they view it as a cool thing to do or as a part of belonging to a particular group. But once initiated, the addictive nature of nicotine makes quitting extremely difficult for these young people. For example, right now, currently we're having our matriculants camps in different schools, and every time they get a break in their school camping to study, then the thing that they carry, which is easy to hide, it's vaping. Then they'll start vaping in school, and those that are not smoking or not vaping, they usually end up joining them because it's at night and it seems like a cool thing to do, and it's something that they're exposed to, which it becomes a dangerous thing as it continues to introduce them to further substance abuse. Number two is a targeted market is one of the challenges we have seen in our communities. Tobacco and nicotine companies exploit youth culture by designing these products with very attractive flavors, sleek packaging, and also digital advertisement campaigns that appeals directly to adolescents. This strategy misleads young people into believing that vaping is harmless, which is incorrect. The idea of these new products, such as vaping being cool, has a lot to do with how vaping companies market their products. For example, we have seen them collaborating with your influencers, celebrities, especially those that have a lot of followers, million followers at the age of below 25. And there's a video right here which I would like to play. And this short clip, it does not have a sound because it's just the music, but the idea of playing this is it's also maybe to demonstrate on how these celebs actually makes such products look appealing to adolescents so that they can be hooked. Well, nothing from this view ads talks about helping adults who are smokers to quit. However, instead, they sell a lifestyle that is falsy to young people. And one of these lifestyles is to make these things seem as cool, as fun, and also as youthful. And the caption even says, there is no weekend like a views weekend. So that it can also seems very cool for them to even utter such captions. And the content is on social media, where around 3.8 million South African youth aged between 18 to 24 were reported to be very much active on it, as in from January 2024. Still talking about the targeted marketing, in 2023, I was part of the data collectors under the survey, which is a study called Tiny Targets. And in KZN, we did the study in Durban and also in Pietermaritzburg, where we saw that the tobacco, actually nicotine products, are being sold at the shops, which are very much closer to school gates. And at the shop, these were the photos that actually we took on the ground. As you can see, how they display the products very much close to sweets and snacks, things that are usually the kids will actually go and buy. And also having such products very much close to things that the kids buy, it's an indirect introducing them to say this is also cool. If it's close to what you eat, it's also something that is cool, and it's also safe for you to also buy and experiment. And this is what we've learned from these tiny targets. Another challenge is that youth interactives through the community engagement across KZN revealed includes the limited awareness of health risk, which despite efforts of government and civil society, many young people will remain unaware of the full extent of the dangers posed by the tobacco product and electronic devices system. There is a perception that vaping is safer than smoking, which is really untrue and highly dangerous. What we also saw, cigars and vapors being a gateway to substance use. Our prevention program that we run has shown a very clear link between an early exposure to nicotine increases vulnerabilities of experimenting with these substances such as alcohol and drugs. And this undermines the development of a drug-free youth, which we are very much trying very hard to create in our community. Youth Interactive strongly supports the Tobacco Control Bill of 2022 because it is a decisive step towards building a healthier South Africa. And also, this bill provides measures that align directly with aspirations of young people for a safer and a healthier of their future. For example, if you can just imagine a smoking-free public space, which government can really restrict smoking in public spaces. The bill protects the children and the young people from the second-hand smoker, which is proven to be very much harmful to also non-smokers. regulation of e-cigarettes and vaping products. The bill ensures that these products are controlled in the same way as a traditional tobacco product, closing loopholes that currently put young people's health at risk. Limiting advertisement and promotion. The bill reduces the visibility of tobacco and electronic delivery system, breaking the cycle of normalization and making it easier for young people to resist the peer pressure that they suffer every day. Health protection and equity. The bill continues to reduce health inequalities by protecting vulnerable communities such as the townships, the rural areas, where tobacco use rises faster than we know. Also, the Constitution of South Africa, 1996, provides strong grounds to support the passing of the bill. Looking at Section 24, which reads, everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being. These sections obligate the state to regulate harmful substances like tobacco products and to protect its citizens' health. Section 27 in subsection 1A reads, everyone has a right to have access to health care services, including your reproductive health care. Preventing tobacco-related diseases through legislation directly advance this constitutional right. The Section 28, subsection 2 reads, a child's best interests are of a paramount importance in every matter concerning the child, meaning protecting young people from addictive substances and harmful marketing practice is in line with this principle. The tobacco bill is therefore not only a health intervention, but also a constitutional imperative that ensures that the rights of young people are safer guided. Youth Interactive calls upon an urgently pass of the Tobacco Control Bill 2022. The youth of KwaZulu-Natal and also South Africa in general deserves a future free from addictive diseases, as well as also the burden of tobacco-related harm. By adopting the bill, we will be taking a firm step towards creating a society where healthy lifestyle choices are norms, and also where young people can strive without the manipulation of the tobacco industry. So honorable members, as I am about to reach my closure, I want to also show you a very concerned video that it was taken on a social media as well, where this Zeni oral nicotine patches has had activations in one of the festival, which is very much heavily attended by young people in South Africa. And the Zeni ambassadors on this video, they show, it show them handing over these nicotine pouches as a samples to every attendees in this clip. So I'm just going to play it. Hopefully this one will have a sound, but also it's just the music. It does not say anything. So it's more of the visual than the sound. So honorable members, I just want to ask this. Is giving nicotine patches to young people at a youth activation really a harmful reduction? In conclusion, in the words of our former President Nelson Mandela, History will judge us by the difference we make in everyday lives of children. Passing this bill will be a landmark decision, that will protect today's youth and secure their future of generation to come. So youth interactive in government, schools, families, and also communities to ensure that this legislation translates into a real behavior change and a strong and healthier South Africa. Ngiyabonga. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mpungose, for your presentation. Let us allow honorable members to interact with the presentation. I will now recognize hands as they come up. Members are not showing any interest to interact. We'll have one round. 2 hands so far. The first one will be that of Dr. Letape. Number 2, that one of Honorable Kumalo. Number 3, that one of Honorable Van Staden. The 4th one will be Honorable Mutubatse. 5th will be Honorable Sinne. Okay, now I see Honorable Clark
was coming. Okay.
Honorable Clark, you are number 7. Shabangu, you are Honorable, you are 8. And Dr. Leroux, you are number 9.
Being 10, Chair.
In that order. Okay.
Being 10, yes, Chair.
Okay, number 1, Honorable Dr. Klappe, 2, Kumalo, 3, Van Staden, 4, Mutubatse, 5, Sinne, 6, Clark, 7, Shabangu, 8, Leroux, and 9. But who am I that now? 9, Keko. Did I leave out anyone? Okay. Yes. Okay. In that order, honorable members, one after the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. My question, just 2 of them. One would be the notion about vaping being safer than cigarettes. Are you aware that that would be unhelpful language that are being used? Because none of these things are safe. They cause harm. And the people that are harm reduction advocates talk about being less harmful than cigarettes rather than being safer. That's the first question, and I'd like to comment on that. The second issue is, do we need to be waiting for a new bill to provide regulations about publishing, advertising substances that have an effect on health? Can't we have the Department of Health come up with regulations in terms of advertising and inappropriate information and misinformation being sent out to the public? That's all that I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Mr. Mpongo said thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just having one question. What role can your organization, schools, communities, and families play in preventing youth tobacco use? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the presenter for the presentation. I was struggling with signal. I couldn't hear clear. You were talking about something about closing the loopholes in this new legislation. Can you just elaborate a bit more on that? What loopholes are you exactly talking about? Thank you, Chairperson.
No, thanks very much, Chair. As young people, why, and I'm just being direct, why do you allow the industries to do this to yourselves as young people? And what, say, for lack of any other term, what revolutionary measures would you suggest that as young people in this country, to save yourselves, should be done in confronting the elder generation in this country not to kill your future as young people? What measures do you think you can do to mobilize young people across sectors, whether in politics, in the industry, journalists of your age, to save your future? Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. Regarding platforms where these products are marketed to the youth, I really need to explore them further. Do you think vapes and tobacco companies also sponsor music, fun, or sports events? If yes, give more examples of those. And also, are there other platforms used to distribute free samples to encourage teenagers or youth to try their products in South Africa? Thanks.
Sorry, Chairperson, can the honourable member repeat the last question?
Okay, I was saying, are there other platforms used to distribute free samples of vapes or, tobacco samples to encourage teenagers and youth to try their products in our country? Do you know of any?
Next. If there's no one, let me come, Chair.
No, it's Clark. After Clark is me. If she's not here, let me come in. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenter for this presentation, especially from the young people, which is one group that we are about in this bill. With regard to the regulation of the e-cigarette and vaping products, some presenters argued that the law should be relaxed in certain areas. Should we allow marketing of these products? Should we allow vaping in some areas? Can you please explain what is your thinking or based on these arguments by the vaping products? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening to the presenter and yourselves. I don't have a particular question, Chair, but let me start by appreciating the participation of young people to this process of policy formulation. It gives us pleasure as the parliamentarians to get those that we think we are protecting having interest in policy formulation. Chair, I just wanted to share an experience that we got during public consultations to various provinces. You will hear or get young people that were bused to those venues that were given handouts by some people from the tobacco industry and vape companies. What role do they think they can play to sensitize those young people about the dangers of getting something that you will have for today as against what is your future, which is passing this bill or saying you support this bill? Because there were those of their age that were being bused to venues just to say, I reject the bill. So I think they have, as young people, they have a role to play to educate those that do not see the importance, that think that their problems of unemployment can be solved by taking those handouts. I just wanted to share that experience and getting an answer if there is any, but giving Mr. Mbongos an advice that they must guard against, they must continue educating the public about the danger of smoking and vaping, including hooking. Thank you very much, Chair.
There are members who were left out. Honorable Clark, Honorable Mutubate, come through.
Thank you, Chair. I'm terribly sorry. I have a problem with my account.
Recording in progress.
I've been trying to hook up on another device because I've been thrown out of my Zoom account, of my Microsoft account. So, oh God, I tell you, this is just a pain. I just need to get my questions that I wrote down. Okay, sorry about that. I've only got one question. Do you fully support all aspects of the bill, or is there anything that you can suggest in terms of changing, in terms of the regulations and recommendations that we're going to be putting forward in the bill? Thank you.
Honorable Dr. Leroux or Honorable Mutubate, whoever is ready.
Thank you, Chair. My questions have already been asked, so I've been covered. Thank you.
Honorable Mutubate.
Chair, I've asked my question. I've passed.
Is there any member that I might not have recognized who would like to ask a question? If not, okay. Let me move away from this noisy part and ask my question. Number one, in your presentation, you indicated that all products should be treated the same in terms of regulations and maybe laws. Now, as we are on the tail end of presentations, there are people who have been coming in to give their views contrary to what we have just said, that there must be differentiation of the products. What's your view on that part? You mentioned the issue of the nicotine pouches, and you showed even the pictures there really influencing the young people. Are you aware that the nicotine pouches are not covered in this current bill? Lastly, following on Honorable Peko, where do you come in to strongly assist the country to make sure that young people are sensitized, even if they look up to those young leaders who are how can you discourage young leaders who are used by the industry to really put this as if it is cool to vape and is cool to do this and that? Your voice can be stronger on that one. Maybe give us responses. We will, at about 6:45, would have come to an end of our responses. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. I think starting from the first question, which I think there was a need of a clarity of, are we aware that using words vaping as being cool? Very much aware of that. Hence, we are also highlighting it that this is actually the language of the industry. When they attract or when they're speaking to young people, they project these products as a cool thing to have and also as a harmless products that they have, which They even say if you want to quit smoking, vape, meaning they are trying to make it more, to look more healthier, and also, to look more sleek and cooler to young people, which is dangerous. And then the other questions, which reads, okay, I'm just going to answer the questions as I see, because I've been writing. I was trying to write very fast. The honorable question, which came from Honorable I'm not sure if I'm reading right, Sine, on the platforms where industry sells. Yes, they do sponsor music events that is attended by young people. Views has also present at DSTV, Delicious Festivals, and also different neighbor festivals that I've seen. But also, this is in other places where they give these samples free. It's where they will have school sports. They'll come in as a sponsorship to come and sponsor the jersey, to come and sponsor the trophy, and also to have their product displayed where young people actually will see, and also they will be giving them for free. So in the very influential spaces where our celebs or influencers will be seen, they are always there. For example, if I can make an example here in Durban, at the beachfront, there's always activities that are happening there. And every weekend on Saturday, there are always people moving around with their nice school bag that have these products, where if you dance or do anything, they will give you for free to actually come and try it. And if you follow them on their social accounts, they'll even give you more things. They'll even give you headphones and other cool stuff that young people actually want. So they are really doing their most on the ground, obviously having a power of money to actually attract these young people. Some of the things that they do, the industry actually goes to universities and colleges, and they offer scholarship to these young people, knowing very much that many young people are still struggling with NSFAS and other funding mechanisms for students. They will be there as an alternative, to say, if you want to be pushing our brand in your campus, at your res, at your college, we will be covering your transport, or will be covering your residential rents and other things that are necessary for students. So it's a very difficult war that we are in as young people, as the industry is right there, making sure that they're using the very same young people. They go as far as using the student political leaders as well. I think there was another question to say, what can we do to make sure that young people actually are aware of this? Let young people listen, and they get influenced by their leadership. This industry will go and buy the very same people so that they can have access to our own institutions on the ground. There was a question that asked what the question about the current laws catered for tobacco. Yes. So the current laws only caters for the tobacco things, and things like vape, which are heavily marketed on our communities and sold to kids, are not regulated. This one is that one alone. It's a loophole. We were referring to such thing as that, to say there are loopholes where they will use the very same constitution to defend their products, because it's not included on the current law, which only caters for tobacco only. And then on the question, which was asked also by member Honorable Shabango, if I'm not mistaken, the role of our organizations in schools and community and stuff like that. Yes, the most that we can do as an organization is to continue to drive the public awareness and education to make sure that young people know how dangerous these substances are for their health, and also to make sure that we also address families to limit the exposure of these products to young people, so that if they smoke, they should make sure that they don't smoke in the house. They don't smoke in front of their children, because that on its own also is an indirect market that they do, and also it's an indirect introduction for their own children to this substance abuse. And one of the key recommendation is that the bill is also focused on other nicotine containing products. I think it was something that was said by our chairperson to say these products, which the Zane was showing on the clip that I shared, are not covered. So it will be also part of our recommendation to say, can they also be included, so that the bill covers every a product that contains nicotine. I'm not sure if I'm missing any other question. But maybe oh yes, the other one was asked if we support the bill with the recommendations. Yes, we support the bill fully. I think I have covered tobacco industry. And maybe also what was also shared by Honorable, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly. It's Claire Go. Apologies if I'm reading that wrong. Also during the hearings, the public hearings, a number of people were passed in by the industry. We've seen that, we've experienced that. At one point, we also set them up where we also told our young people to be where they will pick up the people, and they pick up the wrong group, which was our group. And to their surprise, there were no people that actually were speaking about the gangster bill. And the sad thing is that they will take people that are very much suffering from the very same product we are trying to say the bill must control, so that it's easier for them to quit. And the very same people are used actually to come to these hearings and then vote against the bill. When they are asked why, there are no comment. They're just simply there to actually get that 50 rand or whatever that they're promised, and then they'll go by their day. Which for me, at some point, it seemed like it was defeating the purpose, because they were there. They will come a day before to look for someone who's an influence in the community and give that person the money to say, this is the money for 2 taxes. When they come, they must just say they vote for no bill, and no explanation on why are they voting against the bill. We really much experienced that, and it was really trying very much to defeat the purpose of having a platform such as a public hearing on the bill. I think I've covered everything.
You are covered.
Unless there's something I've missed.
Yeah. If there's any part, Mr. Mpungo, so that you have not covered, you will follow it up with a written response to us. But I think you've covered most of the time of the things, but your time also has just been exhausted. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, for the opportunity.
Your trial. You have been wanting to meet with this committee. You tried many times. Things were not working, but you persisted. Thank you very much, and we will accommodate your discussion and your points in our final deliberation of the bill. Thank you very much. We would now like to invite the last presentation for the day. Is from the South African Medical Research Council. I just want to indicate that you will start at 18:48, and then at 7:20 you complete your presentation. I don't know how we are going to make that. 2 things. Your presentation has got 41 slides, and number 2, it's just my view, not the view of the committee. Your slides are so user-unfriendly. They are all they are very busy. When you come to slide number 23 and slide number 23 and slide number 15, they're extremely busy. I don't know how you are going to make us understand that work. And for me, it is not a presentation. It is just cutting and pasting your book in the MSRC. Sometimes those things are not helpful to us. You need to actually download that and make us understand what is the meaning of that. Then to really send us a presentation that's got more than 100 graphs, and that is very difficult to understand. I tried to go through it 3 times, but I don't know whether I've been able to understand it. But maybe you assist us in your presentation to make us understand this. 41 slides, reduce that to 30 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Good evening. Good evening, honourable members of the Portfolio Committee on Health. We welcome this opportunity as the South African Medical Research Council to make this presentation, and we're grateful that you've given us the opportunity to present the science to you. Given that, as you rightly pointed out, Mr. Chair, there's a lot of science here, and we don't intend to cover it all. We will cover the most important and most salient points that pertain to this control bill, but we also affirm that we stand ready as the South African Medical Research Council to make further submissions or to answer subsequent questions about the science as they may happen. Could I have the next slide, please? I would just like to introduce to you the South African Medical Research Council's position, their orientation, and the members of our the members of the Medical Research Council that are represented here this evening. Just to say by way of introduction that the South African Medical Research Council is a state-funded body. The mandate of the South African Medical Research Council is to prioritize improving the health of the nation by addressing the top causes of death and disability, and we consider this bill to be directly related to that. We are funded by the state. We also accept funding from other funders, but not from the tobacco industry or from the alcohol industry. We're represented here this evening by a number of people. The Vice President of the SAMRC, Dr. Lisa Zuckel, sends her apology. She was unable to be here, but she affirms that she supports this presentation and the contents of it. My name is Professor Jason Bunches. I'm the director of the research unit that is focused on mental health and substance use. And we're also represented by Professor Harker, Professor Egby, and Ms. Gwambi. I now hand over to Professor Egby, who will make this presentation on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Okay. So just to state my disclosures here, there are so many, so I'm just going to show the slide for you to see. I understand, Chair, your worries about the number of slides and the way I've presented it, but you understand better why I did that as the presentation proceeds. I am a senior specialist scientist in the Mental Health, Alcohol, Substance Use, and Tobacco Research Unit. I'm also an honorary associate professor at the University of Cape Town and the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and an research associate at the Sefako Makato Health Sciences University. Other disclosures are as presented on the slide. I'm not going to read my outline. I want to start with a little story of how cigarettes were linked to lung cancer. So in the 17th century, most of the doctors, they never saw a case of lung cancer. In fact, if there is a case of lung cancer, doctors will travel to go and review the case because it could just be the only one they would see in their lifetime. And then came the invention of the cigarette manufacturing machine, and it now led to the production of cigarettes at a very high rate, to the extent that they could produce 20,000 cigarettes per minute, per day, and that led to an increase of the use. Of course, that was coupled with the marketing of these products by the industry. But scientists started worrying when they started seeing an increase in the lung cancer cases, and they started suspecting different things. But 4 bodies of evidence led them to nail it to cigarette smoke. And they used these 4 bodies of evidence from
chemical analytics, that is the analysis of the chemicals in this product. They looked at epidemiology. They looked at animal experiments as well as cellular pathology. So when they looked at these 4 bodies of evidence, they could be able to say, yes, it's cigarettes that must be causing these things. And as of that time, when scientists came to that conclusion, the industry was also doing their own research. But interestingly, they hid it from the scientific community. And in 1954, when an emphatic statement was made that cigarettes were causing lung cancers, what the industry did was to present what is called a frank statement. And that frank statement is the picture you are seeing there. They published it in over 400 newspapers. It reached over 43 million people. And what they said was that the moment they find out that cigarette was causing diseases, that they will stop producing them. But Chairperson, it is more than almost 75 years since then. Cigarettes are still being produced, they are still being marketed. And since that time, there are so many diseases that have been linked to cigarettes, including even as early or as recent as 2002, diseases are still being linked. 2004, diseases are still being linked to cigarettes. So I've heard some people present in this to this honorable committee saying that people die from the nicotine. People smoke for the nicotine but die from the tar. I must say that that is fake news, because that's not true. Cigarettes, the components of cigarettes, they do not only come from the harmful effects of cigarettes. They do not only come from the tar. The cigarette produces other gaseous substances that are harmful to health, and nicotine itself is also harmful. And the question I want to ask is tar produced when people use snuff? If it is not produced when people use snuff, because of course snuff is not burned before being used, why do they then cause cancer? Because snuff has been linked to so many cancers: oral cancer, esophageal cancer, pharyngeal cancer, and so many others. And they are not, the product is not burnt. So that tells us that that statement is actually false. So the cigarettes, the e-cigarettes, as we now know, it was invented in 2003 by a guy named Han Link. He wanted to stop smoking, or to find a safer smoke, according to him, because his father had died of lung cancer. But what happened is that he himself is now a dual user. That means he's using the product as well as using traditional products. And cigarettes, e-cigarettes, as we know it, have also been, the tobacco companies have also entered the market, but they entered the market with the notion that they just want to produce something that will make people get off their backs about the harmfulness of their products. So I want to use these 4 bodies of evidence that was used to nail cigarettes for causing diseases to e-cigarettes, and see if we do have evidence to back this up. Because we've also heard people say there's no evidence to say e-cigarettes are harmful. Yes, they still need to do more studies because it's fairly new. It took about 100 years to know the harms caused by these products. And like I said earlier, 2004 diseases are still being linked to cigarettes. But we have a product that was only introduced into the market in 2004. And so there's no way that we can know everything about it. But what we do know now is enough for us to make decisions about how to protect people from the harmful effect of these products. And so let's start with the chemical analytics, the analysis of the chemical components. So there's this systematic review. There are so many studies. Chairperson, I think one of the reasons why I had to put these pictures is so that you can see that they are live papers. They are not concocted science. They are papers that you can Google the titles and read them. And if you want us to download them and send a pack to the Parliament for your consumption, we will be able to do that as the South African Medical Research Council. And so e-cigarettes have so many substances that are harmful to health. One study found about 60 compounds in the e-liquids and 47 compounds in the aerosols. And what they concluded was that some of the identified chemicals have been labeled as harmful, toxic, or cancerous through human, animal, and cell line studies. And I think that's enough for us to understand that the components of these products are harmful. Also to mention that the aerosols, they are ultrafine particles. The particles are so small compared to even the tobacco smoke. And because they are so small, when they are inhaled in larger quantities and they have deeper access into our lungs. They also have, of course, flavorants, which are mostly made by the acetyl, which is a known substance that causes lung disease. Some of them have tried to replace the acetyl with acetoin. Acetoin, when it is also burnt, it catalyzes to form the acetyl. So it's also very important for us to understand the impact of the flavorants as a harmful component of the product. These are also some studies that show that even the aerosol